All for coming out this morning, and as usual, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have everything but Bob Thompson. We won't guess where Bob went.
Just putting the mic on.
Yeah, putting the mic up.
You want to run the video?
You want the video first?
Have you
Already pledged.
different start to a budget meeting? That's by design. And the reason for that, everything we're doing this year, for those that don't know me, I'm Bob Thompson. I think I walk around and say hi to everybody. Good morning. Very different start. And the reason I wanted to start with that was a video that I got a couple years ago and used it with training with the bank and some of the other things I've done because it clearly depicts the type of focus. You know, there's a huge difference in 1 degree. Okay, 211 degrees, okay, water doesn't boil. 212, water does. Boiling water can move a locomotive. That's what this is telling us, and that's the whole part of this year's budget, is looking at things differently and focusing on things in a different way. Okay, we for years have done things in Ocean Pines that, again, I've been here over 20 years, I love the community, but I think we deserve better and we can do some things better, and that's what this budget is all about, creating new opportunities, new revenue streams. I'm going to try to break it down to you a little bit this morning, give you the process that we've used today, take some feedback. The budget, just so everybody knows, isn't, you know, this isn't the final approved budget. The board will make that decision in February. This is part of the process. Get feedback from the community so we can, you know, collectively, it impacts all of us. So having input from everybody just makes a difference. Okay? So welcome this morning. Again, we're reaching for higher results this year. We've built the budget to focus around doing things differently, reaching for things that we haven't attained before. Looking at things in a different way. When you look at this, it's seen in a couple different ways. You know, do you see the vase? Or do you see the two faces? Okay? And that's how we started this process with the budget, is how we're going to build it different, how we're going to look at some things differently. Okay, that's the only way we're going to get better results. Instead of cost cutting, which has been effective in many ways in the past, we're looking at revenue generation. Okay, very, very different approach. It's, you know, some folks say, well, it's tough economic times and there's problems with issues, you know, with you know, where the economy is and fixed incomes, and I've heard all the things. And I'm understanding of it. My financial background certainly gives me a well-rounded and strong feeling about it. But through this process, we think that we can find ways to offset some of our costs by driving new revenues through the door. I'll share some of those with you. We started in the budget process with our core principle. And the first principle for me was protecting shareholder investments. That's your property values. Everything I do every single day needs to be in lockstep with that. That I'm here to manage our resources in a way and hopefully work with our teams in a way that protects those resources. Okay? And the first priority is property value. That's why everyone's here. Second priority is to create more value. If I can create that value through our collective efforts, okay, that value is extrapolated into the actual property value. Last, in our steps, our processes we're going to use to create that value are two key concepts this year. Open for business and quality of life. Two very different approaches, but we believe that we had to have a focus on how we were going to develop, you know, this year's budget. All right, open for business. Okay, we have over 10,000 year-round residents that I believe in my heart in the past are typically ignored when we're looking at budgets or we're looking at amenities or we're looking at whether it's the yacht club or the pools or what have you. We have residents that live here year-round. We are not a seasonal community. Despite what folks say, you can say Ocean City's this or Ocean City's that. Truth of the matter is we have 10,000 year-round residents here. They deserve the attention. They deserve to have amenities or business lines that not only produce income, okay, but that are open for them to use. Secondly, open to the public. A big, big issue that we have here in Ocean Pines is most people don't know that we're open to the public. And that means if someone outside of our gates wants to come in and use a pool, or someone wants to come and have enjoy a dining experience, whether it's at the cafe or the yacht club or Turner's Grill, or whether it's come to golf. Okay, a lot of folks still think our golf course is a private course. These are fundamental issues that we need to overcome. And in our budget process and our steps are ways to overcome that. And we also believe by bringing people in from the outside, along with our residents that are here full time, it spreads the burden or relieves the burden so assessments don't have to continually go up year after year to pay for infrastructure, to pay for new strategies, to pay for things that we want to do. Well, I think that makes sense, at least in my mind it does. If we do that, if we follow the process of open for business, both internally for the residents that are here and externally for the folks that may come and use our processes, we will remain the premier place to live in the Mid-Atlantic. Okay, everyone's here for a reason, whether it was the beach that brought you here, whether it was the, Ocean Pines in particular, all the amenities we have. Okay, these are things we need to protect. And quite frankly, we've had years and years of neglect of not putting the resources into the property. We need to find ways to do it and to do so without large assessments. So everything with the budget that we've built are following these processes. Quality of life. I mentioned that on my earlier slide. If you do any research and start to look, quality of life is a big issue. According to the American Community Study, and this was one of the most recent studies I could find, rural areas with natural amenities, recreational opportunities, and quality of life advantages are best suited to grow. And grow doesn't necessarily mean building new homes. Grow means grow and flourish as a community. And if you read the study, it kind of explains that. But growing is growing the use of your amenities and activities, growing the revenues generated. Okay, those are the things we need to do to protect our property values. Budget's built around that. Looking at the community in a very different way. Okay, folks that have been working with me a little while, and certainly the board has heard this over and over. As I look at the Ocean Pines Association, I see it in two ways. We have our revenue opportunities. That's our yacht club, our beach club, golf course, aquatics. When I say revenue opportunities, these are our lines of business. I know folks say, oh no, we don't have any business lines, they're only amenities. Truth of the matter is, they generate income, they're lines of business. We need to consider them lines of business and then take the appropriate action to either protect them, to help them grow, or close them down. I'm not a close them down guy, so everything I'm built on is building upon what we already have. Okay? The non-revenue sources, okay, our police force, public works, admin, finance, okay? Quite frankly, we don't produce any income. So when we're looking at the organization as a whole, when I sit down, break it down, and try to look at how we're going to build a budget, how we're going to look at it differently this year, things I have to keep in mind, revenue opportunities, and just, quite frankly, drains on the budget. That's what the two pie charts recognize. We have two clear and defining parts of our organization. Our goal is to reduce the cost here and increase the revenue opportunities there. The whole budget's built around it. The process, because folks have said to me, well, it's a bottom up or a top down or you backed into a number. Let me give you in detail how we actually built the budget this year. And this is factual. You can talk to any department head, you can talk to Art Carmine, you can talk to any folks, see how we actually end up with our budget number. First thing was speaking with all the department heads, from my perspective, was sharing with them some of the things I'm sharing with you folks, is looking at revenue streams, revenue opportunities, dividing the company into two parts, revenues versus expenses, and breaking it down. And then we actually sat down and had a couple different meetings where we talked about if you were going to build your part of the organization, whatever part that may be, okay, I want you to break it down into three categories, okay? No kidding, what do you need to do to keep the doors open? Just to stay in business. Second part, okay, were your wants of, if you could have, some more options, what would it be? What would you like to have, okay, to make your line or your particular area of responsibility even better? And the third was, if money was no object, if you had all the money in the world, what would you spend it on to drive revenues to your cost center or your revenue stream? So that's how we started the process, okay? Breaking it down so everyone was clear, each department. And those resources included capital resources from whether it's a piece of equipment, a new stapler, to human capital. Do you need people? How are you staffed? Those type of things. All those things were included in these 3 areas. Step 2, direction from the board. The board had clear direction of what they wanted to see in this year's budget. They gave the, guide, they do it every year, and I'm going to share those with you, but clearly define what their objectives were, what they were hoping to accomplish when we put this budget together this year. Step 3, sat down and looked at all the departmental requests. Everyone went back, and I will tell you, when you're used to building a budget from cost cutting, when you tell someone what do you need or what would you really desire, it was like pulling teeth from some of the departments, But we've got to break that mold of just get by, just get by. It doesn't work. So this took a little while, validating what they had, understanding what their goals were, and then trying to help coach them into a point where not only were they comfortable to ask for some additional items or additional revenues or additional staplers, whatever, but then helping them understand, well, what does that mean to your individual bottom line? Yeah, it would be great to have, but now how do I take that and what's the impact? Whether it's higher customer service, higher customer satisfaction, offering a better product, offering a better program. What are we doing? What result do we get by adding that X, whatever X may be? Okay? Next part of the process, step 4. And Art will tell you because I said, okay, as we're gathering all these pieces together, at this point, I still didn't know what the bottom line number was. Yes, did I know that the board's adopted a 5-year plan with incremental increases of X? Absolutely, I was on the board. I know that. Didn't calculate what that number meant to me at that point. Wasn't relevant. To build the budget, I needed to start with each area and figure out what they needed, and then I could, as it starts to add up, we can figure out how that impacts the overall budget. So we tabulated from each department. Then we adjusted the budget. We took a look and said, okay, does this meet the 5-year plan that was in place? From a funding mechanism, the $30 increment, and we're going to get into that plan. Mr. Gomshak is going to go into details. So it's a plan that was adopted a few years ago, and it's a continual plan. Then I went through the gauntlet, and I say the gauntlet because, and you look at some of the budget and finance folks in here, bless you. Very detailed 5 days of constant fire on the budget. Hence some of the results you've seen in the paper. Thompson recommends this, he needs to cut it in half. I'm going to show you how the budget was developed and why those numbers are there in greater detail. Okay? But I will tell you, it was a good process to go through. Because if I'm going to stand up in front of 8,442 members, okay, I know we don't have them all here, but between the video, what they read in the paper, everything else, that's who I report to. I've got to be able to answer those tough questions. Step 7, met with the directors again. Went through, we spent 2 days going through the budget, and that included with the budget and finance recommendations, several committee members, okay, in great detail. Now, here's where we are today, presenting the budget to you. Understand that the presentation to you today isn't the final budget, okay? This is part of our process. Transparency, understanding what the budget's about, and getting input. Because, quite frankly, we built it, but it doesn't get finalized until the February meeting. So you have the input. This is part of being a community. Some of you are going to agree, some are going to disagree. But hopefully we find that middle ground and we end up, by our February meeting, with a real strong budget that's a catalyst for future opportunity for us. And then Board of Directors will approve the budget. No, that's not the right date. 25 January?
No.
16 February. I knew I had it. I checked it last night. But that's when the actual board meeting, and that is an evening meeting. For those that don't know, that want to be part of it, I just want to make sure that was there. But that's your process. They're the 10 steps that have occurred in great detail to get us where we are today. Less these two, the budget board meetings next Tuesday to refine, and then the approval. Okay? Board guidance. For those that haven't seen them, these were the rules at which, or the parameters that I was given to start the budget. Current economic conditions. You know, be aware of them. When you're building your budget, don't be pie in the sky. Understand economic conditions, understand how they impact our residents or our members. Okay? Understand how it's impacting us regionally. Limit aggregate staff salaries to 3% and base it on merit only. There seems to be some lost in translation somewhere where people say, oh, he's recommended 3,000 across the board. Absolutely not correct. But when you're building a budget, you have to start somewhere. So the guidance was 3%. And by the way, that's the same guidance as year before. And guess what? I haven't been giving 3% across the board. Talk to the department heads. When they're submitting their recommendations for increases, they are merit-based, and absolutely they have to justify it. You can, you know, when you're out in the community, ask them, has Bob approved everything? They're going to tell you no. You've got to use good judgment. But for a budget or the parameters, you got to have something to work with. That's where the 3% comes in. Mindful of repairs, renovations, changes we may have in our facilities. My goodness, that's a big issue. It's been hot for several years. We have a 5-year plan that's been adopted, you know, 2-3 years ago now, and this is our 3rd year, and it's building to help protect those, or at least build some funding to help protect those. Increased quality of product and services offered. Okay? Again, it goes to that theme. How are we going to drive revenues? How are we going to create quality of life if we don't make those quality of product and services offer improvements? That has to be considered when you're building a budget. Increase revenues through amenity usage. Again, if we're providing the right type of product, amenity usage, more people coming to use the aquatic center. Okay, how do we do it with types of things? Give you a great example of just one thing we've done already, but this is part of the philosophy building the budget. We did half-price memberships starting in January. We've generated revenues of over $2,400, and we have 50 new memberships. First 11 days of offering the product. What's that? Aquatics. What did I say? Oh, I'm sorry, aquatics. I saw Tom Perry back there, who's been instrumental in our new aquatics director. So, you know, we are making changes daily, but part of the budget is taking advantage and looking at those things. You know, how do we do that? So there's $2,400 in one change in an 11-day process that we wouldn't have already had. But it's that mindset, the conceptual change of doing things differently. Funding consideration for road resurfacing. Anybody here think we're getting $500,000 again this year from the county? No. We're not, right? Okay? I need to be mindful of that because we do have to protect our assets in our community through our roads. You know, we need to figure out how we're going to manage that. Fire department, recognition, and everybody knows the intensity that came with the fire department last year with the budget, the negotiation. This is an area I'm real proud of. We did focus on it, and I'll give a breakdown, but we worked real close with them this year with our budget. Continue with the 5-year planning. Okay? Part of the guidance was, hey, Bob, don't blow up that plan. Work within that plan because we have needed infrastructure adjustments we need to make in the future, whether it's rebuilding, repairing, whatever it's going to be. I need to be aware of that and make sure with my planning process for the budget, we continue that. In doing so, another piece of the puzzle, made a decision this year, okay? First year as general manager, first year of a new focus on revenues and those types of things. It's real easy to say, well, hey, I've got some ways. I can increase boat slips by X dollars. I can increase amenity use of X dollars. I don't think that's fair. I need to create more value so you want to come, therefore increasing usage. So guess what? We held the line on membership fees this year. They're the same as they were last year. One exception in the entire budget. Golf. $1 per 9 holes in cart fee increase, or $2 per 18 for those who keep correcting me on that. Okay? If you break it down, it's $1 per 9. Okay? Right, Pete? Okay, that's the only increase in amenity fees that we've had this year, built in or baked into the budget. Okay, started going down the revenue, you know, the opportunities were on the revenue side, Yacht Club. You guys have seen some of the differences. But I want to make sure you understand some of the thought process or strategies dealing with the Yacht Club. First thing, first and foremost, with everything, with all of our amenities when we built the budget, we need to be open for business. If we're not open, we don't make a dollar. Conversely, I know some folks argue with me, well, if we're closed, we don't have any expenditure. I know there's that two sides of that coin. I'm telling you, I believe we're in a wonderful position, 10,000 year-round residents. Being open for business is critical in everything we do. And not just to be open. Quality of product, quality of service offered when we're open. Quality. Quality is a key focus in everything we're doing now. It's not just open because we're here to be open. Whether it's a product, a service, a new type of offering, everything's focused on quality. Exceptional service, okay? When you come in, I want to show of hands because it may be overwhelming for some, but Java Bay, which is new, has been overwhelmingly successful from a number of people coming in each day and a lot of repeat customers, okay? Folks coming in, trying it out either for the first time, folks that have come in the past said, I'm never coming back to the Yacht Club again, are coming through the doors to see what it's all about, okay? But if we don't offer exceptional service and quality product when they come in, guess what? They're not coming back. The glitz and glamour goes away very, very quickly. Well, by the repeat customers, okay, and by the ongoing response and feedback we're getting, okay, to include, we started our comment card program 2 weeks ago Friday. The first week, 26 comment cards that go into the box. And of the comment cards, I am the only one that has the key to the box. Didn't know that. Couldn't find the key at first. I realized it was in my desk, but I was the only one with the key. Okay, we started the program because one of the big things for us, and a part of why we're here today, feedback is critical in everything we do. Whether it's building the budget, offering a new Pilates or Zumba program here, or the quality of the coffee or the pie at the Yacht Club. Feedback is critical if we're going to be successful. Okay? Consistent. We have to consistently offer either a product, a service, okay, at a high level of consistency. We have to be happy when you come in. And again, Java Bay, I can go to that just because it's the most recent, and I'm not leaning on that as a crutch. But the fact of the matter is that's a brand new, endeavor for us. And one of the things I can tell you, open for business we are. Quality of product is there because I know what we're buying and how we're buying it. Exceptional service. Anyone's been there, that's probably the critical thing I keep hearing. Boy, those girls are happy to see us when we come. Always smiling, always happy to have you in. That's important. And now we have to do it consistently, and I believe we have so far. Does not mean we're going to stop trying, doesn't mean we're going to stop making improvements. But there's an example. If we do all four of those, okay, we're going to be successful. That same application can apply to any of our facilities, any of our amenities, anything we offer. But I'm giving the elements here because this makes sense. People have come to have the coffee or the bagel or the donut or the lunch wraps. This is a formula we apply, and that seems to be working well so far. Cafe, for those who haven't been, I see a lot of folks, a lot of people are here. We made some investments. The board was willing to give us a shot and said, yeah, okay, let's see. Let's see what this is about. And I will tell you, so far wildly successful. More successful than I actually thought it would be from a sheer numbers of people coming through the door. We're still starting to tabulate. Obviously, you have costs, because we now have employees there. Obviously, we have food costs. Obviously, we have all these other costs that are going to go into it, okay? But truth of the matter is we doubled our regular food sales. We doubled it from last year's volume. Now, expenses have to go against that. But doubling it shows, at least initially, people are coming in to check it out and see it and see what it's all about. Okay? A lot goes in. We're going to talk about payroll. I'm not going to go every department. I'm going to hit some of the high level. At the end, I'll give you a more detailed approach. But I think it's important because that's what everyone keeps saying. Oh my gosh, you're spending X amount of dollars and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to show you how this works out. Okay, I'm going to try to break down some of the ones that have the most impact in my slides. I'm not going to every one of them. But I think these are important, and so you understand conceptually the rationale behind some of it. 2011 budget. Payroll, 2012 against budgeted. I've doubled the cost. If you look at 2011 budget against 2012 budget, double. You sit back and go, oh my God, this guy's lost his mind. Truth of the matter is, our budget was built on being closed December through May. Closed. So really, it's an odd number to try to compare year over year when you're looking at that much of a difference if we're scheduled to be closed. So I had to go, okay, what's reasonable? How do I present this in a way so people understand what I looked at when I did this? All right, well, 2010 is the next year I can go back to factual information where we were open for business. Actual payroll costs, 414 compared to our 547, guess what? 143. Not nearly as much of a jump as there. Then you factor in a couple things. Let's start with the chef. We've had no chef in 2010. Part of the budget items that we have here includes the chef. So if we plug in what a chef would be, there's our difference. Guess what, guys? $78,000 is very close to the personnel cost for Java Bay year-round, 6 a.m. till 2 p.m. every day. That's where the number is. I'm not hiding anything. There's our numbers. Not hard, not rocket science. Pretty simple when you look at it. So we've increased hours of operation, open year-round, and potentially hire an executive chef. Now I have had emails go, why do we need a chef? I actually had a board member say, Bob, I'm not sure we need a chef. I'm going to tell you all right now, I'm not sure we need one yet. Don't know that. The guys at Nick and Chris in the kitchen, our cooks, have been doing a fantastic job with our lunch menu and changing some things. Quite frankly, they've stepped up a whole lot. But it would be irresponsible of me to go, you know what, I'm going to leverage, I'm betting everything on these two guys. It just doesn't make sense. So what I did was budgeted, for a chef in the mix this year. If we hire one, don't know yet. I need to budget for it. It makes sense. What month we hire will impact the overall cost of the association. And lastly, what type of plan are we going to implement? That will make a difference whether we hire a chef or not. But again, I'm building a budget. I think it's the right answer to at least bake it into the cost. Talk about the next couple phases. This will help us determine with the chef. Phase one was getting the yacht club, getting people through the door. The whole thing of Java Bay. And guess what? I drink tea or water. I don't even drink coffee. I couldn't tell you a good from a bad cup of coffee. I'm a sissy. It's too strong for me no matter who makes it. Okay? But guess what? That doesn't mean it wasn't built for me. It's not an ego thing for me. Realistically, Dunkin' Donuts and McDonald's have made their numbers on coffee sales. But guess what? Business tells me, let's take advantage of that. People come here in the summertime, and not just summer, but for the holidays. People come to visit their families that live here. By the way, we do have people who live here year-round. And what do? They get in their car, and they go to West Ocean City to a converted 7-Eleven to go to a Starbucks coffee. They travel all the way over there. And I got to tell you, anybody's been to a big city, that doesn't even resemble a Starbucks except for some of the colors when it comes to the size, the sitting area and those types of things. It is packed every morning. I challenge everybody to go over and look and tell me that's not true. Summertime, there's a line. I know I used to work in West Ocean City. They had the foo-foo drink, a protein shake I like. Lovano or something. I never know all the names. When they started changing from small, medium to large, I was done. Latte, frappe, super size, whatever. Okay? But I'll tell you, you go over there to get it, big hit. So why not capitalize on that? So we've done that. Seems to be working. Phase 2 of that is continue with the same type of decor, the same type of presentation on the first floor for the remaining part of the building. Now, what's interesting about that, okay, we go, oh man, he wants to spend more money. We've already made the majority of the investment with the coffee side of it, between the equipment, the bar, all the other things. The majority of the rest of it is cosmetic. Drywall, drywall finish off the bottom of the windows. If we finish the bottom of the windows, some things have happened. People have said, and it makes sense. When we closed in the bottom of those windows, first thing we did is put 2-inch insulation in the windows, foam insulation in the windows. Then you put drywall. Okay, so guess what? Baseboard heat, the heat was being mitigated by the windows being wide open. Now the heat gets to rise and expand. Guess what? The Java Bay side of the building down there is much warmer than the other side. Minor change, significant difference. And so it's type of mindsets and things we got to think about when we're doing this. So the next step to the expansion in phase 2 is wrapping the windows, putting the arches, changing the color scheme a little bit. Okay? A small shift to the bar to give us more seating area. Because quite frankly, everybody's over there at lunchtime, we don't have seating now. What a great challenge to have is not enough seating for folks coming in, or you're stacked up. The other thing about the cafe, which has been extremely important to me, is a community gathering place. I mean, yes, we have a community center here, but what brings you here? An activity. Java Bay, you'll go over to have a slice of pie, a cup of coffee. I guess it was about 11 days, 12 days into it. I was over there, I was there first month, I was there every day. Just going in, seeing, feel, make sure I understand what's going on. Gentleman came in, a friend of mine, and he was actually coming out and was coming in. He was very excited. And he was real excited because he met a neighbor from 3 doors down that rode a motorcycle like he did, didn't know it. Same family type of situation, here year-round, but he had never really met and sat and talked. Because the place was packed, sat on a sofa, asked who he sat next to him, and the dialogue began. He's made a new friend. That, in essence, is what Java Bay, for me, is all about. Bringing new people through the door and bringing existing, clientele back over and over as a gathering place. And that's what's working for us. Some folks are like, well, oh my goodness, we need to know exactly how many dollars we're making each day we're open. The truth of the matter is, it's not about money with Java Bay. There's minimal cost overall when you're looking at, that type of facility. The gathering, the recurring customers, happy to see you. It's a theme. It's a theme we're pushing out, and that's the type of theme we're trying to roll into the entire community. Oh, back to that one. The chef, again, I already told you, it's not a done deal. Phase 3 is what we're developing. That'll be second floor dining. Understand something, I do not believe, and I had an email from a gentleman, and it was a great question. Bob, fine dining doesn't work in the community. I've never said fine dining at the yacht club. Never coming out of my mouth. So I want to make sure you all know, it's not a fine dining that I'm looking at, it's quality of dining. Whether it's the best damn hamburger you can buy, or the best chicken salad, or shrimp salad, or crab cake, or whatever it is, we need to do it very, very well. I don't see white tablecloths with the tall candles, the quiet atmosphere. I just don't see that as being the target for us to do what we need to do to make that facility profitable. But I do think we can do some things better, certainly with upstairs. The other thing that we're going to look at this year when it comes to our food and beverage, and I put it on the yacht club because they didn't cover beach, and again, I'm giving you some high level, but campus management. Joe Reinhardt, as hard as that man works, had to cover 3 major facilities, and during season, when I say season from May until September, or April through October, depending on how you look at it, had oversight and responsibility for the yacht club, for the beach club in Ocean City, for the country club. Well, the challenge with that, the yacht club itself creates its own, I mean, that's a big enough facility with enough people, with enough things. We've narrowed his scope of focus to manage that property. We're going to look at a different management strategy in Ocean City this summer when we open the beach club. Give some more focused on-site management. The reason for that, great example at the beach club in Ocean City, we had 3 department heads, 3 directors that were in charge of that facility in pieces. One for aquatics, one for parking or bathrooms, and one for food service upstairs. So if we had a dirty bathroom, if someone, a customer or guest complained about upstairs, there was no one on site that could make a difference because she had to call over to here in the middle of summer and hopefully get somebody at the department head level. Then he or she would have to call somebody else to get someone over there in the middle of summer. None of that works for me. It doesn't make sense from a business alignment. So campus management means one person is in charge of one area or line of responsibility. Cleans it up, makes it simple, and guess what? They're the one ultimately responsible for that facility. Big difference, big philosophical change. Revenues are going to be on his or her shoulders. Okay, here's kind of the concept with the yacht club. Rec and Parks here, okay? We're already extending programs. Big push is quality of life. Quality of life includes programming, significantly with programming. Pickleball. I couldn't have told you. I laughed when I heard pickleball. Really? Pickleball? What? It's a joke, right? One of the fastest growing sports for the senior community. Pickleball. It's tennis indoor at a slower pace. Wow. And you look at it, they're moving. Great exercise, great program. Again, if you don't know, you don't know what it's about. And they're booming over here with pickleball. And growing and growing. And you think, pickleball. So programming is going to be critical to continue with the quality of life effort and continue with some of the things we want to do. So we have pickleball, Zumba class. We have 2 Zumba classes. One of them has 20, the lady teaching it can only teach approximately 20 people. The instructor is what her ideal class. We had 27 or 28 immediately that signed up. She was willing to take it, but now we have to extend that. We also have a Zumba Gold. And those that don't know it, it's a kind of a salsa Latin exercise dance program, but it gets you moving, gets the heart rate up, gets everything going that you need from an exercise program. They're the type of programming differences. We're looking at programming a Wii Bowling League. You know, people go, oh, is he kidding? One of the local rehab centers has over 45 people that participate in a Wii Bowling League. Rehab. People are moving, the movement, the creating the opportunity. These are things we need to think about. Not everything's going to work. But you know what? I guarantee you nothing works if the doors are closed. Nothing works if we don't try. Whole trust behind our Rec and Parks. I give you the numbers here because this was another one that came up as a highlight or a big concern. See the difference? And I have had someone call me out and go, wait a minute, that's not the real difference. When I give numbers, I try real hard to give sound reasoning behind it and report it in a way that you go, okay, this makes sense. Look at my notes at the bottom here. Okay? We had an employee that was working under the Public Works Department, okay, but worked at this facility. So his direct supervisor wasn't here to supervise him any given day. Quite frankly, the majority of the days. And the person worked here supporting this facility and the grounds around it. Doesn't make sense to me. We realigned one of those employees, took it out of one department and realigned it to this department, hence part of the increase. Okay? Secondly, we had a 40-hour employee, and we had 4 of these, just so everybody knows, in the organization, working 40-plus hours for us, but was being paid part-time. Okay? I made the decision, not this budget year, but the one we're sitting in, to change that and make them full-time. Now, I got criticized by some of the budget and finance folks, oh, you didn't have the authority, you couldn't do it. Morally and ethically, I'm on the high ground on this one. I'm not having someone work there 40 hours a week and paying them as a part-time employer. It's wrong. I'm not going to do it. So there's a judgment call there. I accept the responsibility. It was my call to make. Lastly, they have asked for an increase in direct supervisor. Managing the facility with the programming. Some of the programming, and again, it's not in my slides, but some of the programming we do real well. Those who haven't participated, some of the bus trips. The ongoing, we've had we're up to 3 buses for Tattoo. And I'm thinking, Tattoo, the little guy from yeah, some of you remember who I'm talking about, right? But yeah, the play, that's right. I'm thinking, no, and I'm thinking tattoo artist. No, it's a marching band, military type, and when you look at it, sounds real, yeah, those events just rave about it, where they're doing it. The other program is Spanish Kids, Jersey Boys. Now I can think of Jersey Boys, God, there's going to be some young kids playing to the teeny bop girls or whatever. No, it's a play or something up at packed. And again, I share those stories because I'm sharing there's things I don't know, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to try and explore it. Because the only way we're going to make a difference is to understand what we're trying to do. And try to step out and find out what's working, what's not working. Look at it from a business perspective. Well, these things are working. Well, I need to increase the programming for those. Well, guess what? Between the extended hours and the increased programming, it makes sense that we need some more folks to support that. Aquatics. Real excited about the aquatics program. Again, I'm highlighting some areas that all the areas of both, budget and finance, and some others either called me, emailed me, had some of the paper reporting, so everybody knows what's going on. Goals of aquatics, real big for me. Revenue neutral. That's this year. Please understand, I intend to go the other way next year. And Tom's left us, Tom Perry, our aquatics director. But revenue neutral for me. We've had declining revenues. We all know why. Everybody tell me? Covered pool. Part of that, aquatics made money. But guess what, guys? Just because it's covered, just because we lost money, I'm not in the mindset to tear it down. I like the covered pool. We just have to find a way to utilize it differently. It's there now. Let's use it. Again, I highlighted the first 11 days of the year, we made $2,400 we wouldn't have already made. We are looking at it differently. So programming is going to be critical there. Diving classes, deep water rescue classes, rehab classes, things we haven't done before that could add to the bottom line. Rehab classes are huge. You're getting folks in the pool that have had an accident, knee replacement, hip replacement, whatever. We don't capitalize on that. Guess what? A lot of that money comes from the hospital. From insurance, those type of things. Why aren't we capitalizing on that? Instead, we're just going to complain that we have a covered pool that's losing money. I don't look at any of it that way. These are opportunities for us to make improvements. Expand membership and guest use of the pool. I highlighted that earlier. We've already taken steps, and that's starting to work for us. Real excited about that. New programming, extended hours. This has been a biggie, and this goes to the theme open for business with every facility. Okay, we're open for business. We've extended our facility hours till 10 o'clock. Okay, folks are like, oh my goodness, you're extending hours. Well, guess what, guys? To heat that pool through the night, I got one or two extra staff there to get the extra couple hours. It makes sense to me to get people in the pool. Quality of life increases. We can do some programming changes to put people in the pool. More people in the pool, guess what? More revenues, more profits. Not dirty words. New tracking process. Everything we do, okay, we're trying to track it. It's great to throw things out there and go, oh, it's working, it's great, it's wonderful. We're trying to track it. We're trying to see if it's actually working. We had approximately 2,300 people in our pool, in our covered pool, through the month of December. I have a breakdown week by week and usage and all that. So we are trying to see what we're doing, and we're tracking it so we know what programs are working or what not. What other, and Tom Perry uses a great analogy. He says, Bob, I'm just the landlord of the pool. He's the landlord for the facility. How does he get the number of people in there renting space from us? Great way to look at it. Again, Tom has a significant business background, not just an aquatics background. He's looking at it differently. How do we drive revenues? How do we increase profits? Again, they're not dirty words. It's a good thing to consider. We have the amenity or the asset, and this the covered pool. Why not utilize it to the fullest capacity? New training classes. We have OC Tri class that started. Chloe's now teaching a weekend aerobics. Everybody knows her and her classes. They're packed. She's extended, offered to start doing weekend classes. It's packed already. Just positive things to learn. Last thing, expansion of pool maintenance initiatives. Part of the thing I look at is ways to create new opportunities. And there's some concerns about how we're, are we venturing into an outside business activity? Let me make sure everybody understands. Pool maintenance for us, we maintain our pools. We have an outside maintenance contract with the park. We maintain their pool, we get some revenues for it. Well, if that's working and been effective, why would we not explore the opportunity to do that at some other? That's what we're doing. The budget includes that, bless you. Doesn't mean we're going to jump out the door and do it, because there are things. And the board's brought it up, we are checking into it, we have liability issues. If we not only do the maintenance part of it, but we supply lifeguards, which is a big area where we can have some impact, but then our liability dramatically increases. How do we mitigate that? How do we make it worthwhile? I don't have every answer yet. We're building a program. We're mirroring a program from a group that manages over 300 pools in Ohio. We've gotten their books, their programming, they've been down to see us. It's great, and they're willing to share everything. We're no threat to them from competing, and they're sharing information with us. Well, if this is an opportunity for us, why would we not consider it? Well, at this point, when we're building a budget, I need to include it in my budget consideration. Whether we do it or not, a different factor. If we don't, guess what? We don't have the expenses, i.e. the lifeguard. That's our biggest expense in that particular initiative is lifeguard expenses. And I'll show you how they break down. If we don't do it, we don't have the expense. But when you're building a budget, you should be building for these type of opportunities. Doesn't mean we're going to necessarily do it. The liability is a big concern. Myself, the board's actually said, Bob, we issued it. Understood. But it's baked in, so we at least have the opportunity to consider it further over the next couple months. Aquatics, budget, payroll, budgeted, increase. Okay, now let me break this down a little bit. We have an increased lifeguard expenses right here. That's the new initiative. Okay, that's for the monitoring or the pool initiative that we're talking about. Well, if we decide not to do it, we don't have that expense. But it's in the overall expense. When you guys see in the paper, oh, it's $820,000. Well, guess what? There's a big part, or not big, but there's a part of it. Okay? We also have a couple of our employees that manage our pools, Public Works. Part of their income, but it doesn't fall under here. It falls under Public Works. So our employees helps to maintain our pools. Excuse me, and the pool at the park. We believe we have some capacity to expand that to some other pools without hiring new employees. But those costs we've already figured in. They're in the other budget right now because we're not sure how many, or even if we're going to do the program. Highlights, fire department, another big issue. And I've got a big thing that's come up, and I got to tell you, I'm most proud of this. Anybody's been through the fire department process, excuse me, knows where we are. There was a lot of energy created last year around the fire department. The budgeting, the EMS, this, that, and the other. It has taken months. Some people say it should go faster. I think it's moved at the right pace because our numbers are looking real good here. Some things that the fire department has agreed and has already taken action on, which is huge. Again, it's part of working together and understanding. For those that don't know it, they've already paid off the mortgage on the North Side Station. $800,000 they've paid off. That's a pretty big step in my mind in the right direction. New accounting method. A lot of the questions came in with their accounting. Why are they not doing this? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing it? It wasn't because they didn't want to or they were meaning to do it in a different way. They just, quite frankly, had it differently than we did. And there were some errors, not errors, but there were some things there that you kind of go, oh, why are you doing it this way? Shouldn't you consider this? Well, guess what? They looked at it. They've been working real close with their accountant. I'll tell you, Mr. Gomsak's been intimately involved with their accountant, John Stern from PKS, how they're reporting, changing the reporting structure. End result, we have a much better reporting structure. All the EMS monies are now included in their budgeting request. All of them. Pretty significant. All previous OPA funding is accounted for with the budget. And when I say that, some of the questions, some of the concerns, well, we've overfunded, we did this, the dollars are all now accounted for. All right, we've created the outline or the parameters, and it's the final tweaks are being done now, but for the reserve accounts, the money that they've had in either savings or investments or what have you, they now have allocated towards apparatus replacement for the most part. Okay? which means, you know, when they have $1 million ladder truck that comes through and 12 years, whatever the number is, and there's a detailed chart on it, they know how much it costs, the reserves are put away, all of our money that we've given to them has all been accounted for. Very, very different, much tedious process, much more detailed, but end result is transparency, much clearer process for everybody. Reserve replacement, capitals, depreciation schedule, all these things were left out for this year's request by design. So you say, oh, you didn't include it. We didn't because we don't have the final plan for the reserve component. So they're not asking for any reserve for replacement, for the apparatus replacement. Okay, we're this close, we don't have it finalized. So why include it? It's not a necessity, so we chose not to. Fundraising money intentionally left out. Reasoning behind it, this is over and above, this is an activity, if you look last couple of years, they haven't made a lot, just the economy, but over and above, we decided to slate that money in a different bucket, not included in this year's funding. Depreciation schedule, that goes hand in hand with the reserve funding requirement, so that was left out. So those components are out of it by design, not because we're hiding it, because they'll show you their schedule. It actually makes a lot more sense now, but it doesn't impact this year's budget. So we just didn't include it in the formula, didn't include it in the calculation, because there's no impact. But it is the file details that are being ironed out now. And not because there's two completely different sides, it's just getting all the columns to line up the right way. Go, oh yeah, this makes sense to us. And I would tell you, and Mr. Gomsek can probably tell you, John Stern's been wonderful to work with, very accommodating, the fire department has. We're real close on finalizing these pieces. Would you agree?
Yeah, in agreement.
Okay? So real excited about the fire department. Total funding request this year in the budget was reduced by $180,000. Very significant reduction in the funding this year. A little hard to see. I'm going to give this to you in a couple different ways, okay? But I want you to see the numbers that everyone's talking about, and again, I'll share it to you in a different way in a few minutes, but we're talking about payroll cost increases, okay? Year over year. Payroll cost, billed labor. This was something I shared with the board of directors and part of what we talked about with the budget and finance committee, just so you know where some of the numbers are coming from. Real significant. Unemployment for Maryland, those that don't know, went up 2.5%. Significant increase. That impacts all our employees, whether we hire anybody else or not. Existing employees. I mean, these are some things that have impacted us that are all baked into the 820 number. Just give me a minute to look at because there's a lot there.
See an 820 number.
You don't? That looks like it to me.
Sorry. Right there.
It's there, Marty. I'm not hiding anything, brother.
I see it in your phone, and you are, and I'll tell you that.
I know. I'm sure. Okay. Human and capital increases. This really created the most firestorm this year. Right here. There's our number, 820, just to point out what Marty was looking at. 2012, 2011 difference. 820,000. I'm going to try to show you where some of those numbers come out. So you know it's just not, oh my goodness, he just wants to put tons of people here. It's really not that much of a difference, and I'll show you why. Okay, let's start. Increasing a four full-time employees. Now please understand, okay, that I've already converted 4 full-time employees that were working. Now I'm going to talk to you, the 4 full-time employees. We've talked about them, but let me just, rec supervisor, chef, okay? The 2 that you haven't seen on the slides is HR, okay? And IT, information technology. They're the 4. Now, those employees, we're going to just give you a quick oversight. We already talked about the rec supervisor, how we would utilize that person. We talked about the chef at the yacht club, okay? Let's talk about the other 2. Human resources. We have 70 to 80 full-time employees, we plus up, and in the summertime, we could have in excess of between 200 and 300 employees that work for us. We have no HR with this organization. I say no HR, I will give credit, again, it's part of kind of being really lean and mean, I think to a fault at this point, but Art and his staff, each of them kind of pick up a small piece of it, you know, with payroll or with insurance or those type of things. But the truth of the matter is we don't have anyone looking out for our interest or the employee's interest when it comes to HR. I just kind of scratch my head. I've never seen that. Some people say, well, you can do one or the other. There are some other opportunities with HR that you can consider. There's an HR 241, Tom?
411.
411, where you actually can do an on-call HR service, okay? We're going to look at exploring that, which may mean, well, wait a minute, instead of a full-time position with the HR, maybe we get someone 30 hours a week and we utilize the service. We're going to look at those as options. As part of this process is what other things are available out there, okay? But truth of the matter is that's one of the positions. The other one is information technology. All our computers, or all this type of equipment and stuff that we manage. Now, I will tell you, Mr. Shorten here does a great job for us. He does somewhere between 2 and 3 days a week, okay? And we're already paying for his services through a contract. So the difference between the two is relatively nominal when you're looking at going to a full-time employee versus a contractual employee. Now, the conversion of the part-time people. I talked about before, but this is part of the increase. I don't want anyone to be confused by it. 4 positions where employees left over the last year or two, okay? Full-time employees. When they left, the management at the time made the decision to fill the positions but not make the people part-time. Intent was hire them under, or not to make them full-time, make them part-time. Figuring, okay, there's a good middle ground there. I understand. You know, tough times, we want to make sure. But the truth of the matter is, quickly they ratcheted up to 40-plus hours of work because the work's there. So, again, my decision is baked into the numbers, but I convert those folks to full-time. Aquatics, we talked about the initiative of 56K, Java Bay. This is how one slide shows 78,000, this one shows 82. There's a quick, you can't say 100% here's what the number is. So we're there pretty good swag when we talk about the hours of operation, and in fact we're getting busier and busier. Yacht Club, all other, again, being open for business and not closed for 4 to 5 months. All other part-time and seasonal, and again, you're going to see where this number adds up. The bottom line is going to be what? 820. Reduction from golf. Someone pointed out, rightly so, budget and finance. Wait a minute, Bob, you're hiding a number because you didn't get the reduction in the golf number. There it is. I'll take that number. It's a negative number, which is not necessarily a good thing because if you add to the 820, it's 890. Salary increases. Again, 78 grand. This is the 3%, and this isn't guaranteed everyone gets them. You have to have a budget number. Additional payroll, health insurance, across the board, all that added up was just over 100. I tried to round it to simple numbers. Just in a presentation, I don't want to have all the, $100,632. Just not for this, because this is where the 820 keeps coming in. I just want to give it simple terms. Decrease in capital labor. A lot of questions about capital labor. I got to tell you, I really had to wrestle to get my arms wrapped so I understand it fully. Easiest way to explain this, okay? Capital, and Art, please jump in because it's kind of a tough concept, but capital labor is where we're having folks work. Example, the bulkheads or golf drainage project. Outside contractor comes in, but our guys do, come in and do some of the work to finish up, to shore up or do those things. That's a capital labor expense. Because I've removed some of those projects, that capital labor expense is not, or is included, but what happens, it reduces it. Bottom line, has a negative impact on the budget from when you're looking at the numbers. Just we're not getting paid the money for that capital labor that outside contractor will pay us for that labor cost. So it's a reduction over last year. So it's a plus number. So all that totals 736. All those components. Variance of 84,000 is included. I did not go down to each employee and break down the additional payroll cost employee by employee. Payroll costs are up overall. I mean, HR benefits, I can tell you about HR is up, taxes, FICA, all those things factored in is where the majority of the 8,400. That puts you at a bottom line of $820,000 increase. Okay? Everybody see that? This is what generated the most questions. Now, let me go into a little more detail so everybody follows this. I'm going to show it to you two ways, because this, I think, is important when you look at the numbers. Because the easiest thing is to say, tough times, does he really do that? Let me just give you something to compare it to, because I think this is critical. What I've given you is our human capital investments over the last 10 years. Okay, we're going to start at the bottom here. In 2002, we had 85 full-time employees. These are the dark green is where our most expense is. Total of 131, and overall seasonal part-time, the mix of everybody else. 85, 85, 83, 78, 79, 78, 85, 78, 72. Ooh, 67. My request is 75. If you look at the history, not just look year over year, I made 4 employees here full-time now. I'm not having full-time people working, calling them part-time and not paying them. So really, that number should be 71. But even with that, let's look at how this impacts us. Again, the dark greens are full-time employee, our most expense. This is what our average over 10 years. We've averaged 79.5 employees for the association over the last 10 years. Our budget asks for 75. Last couple of years, we've cut too deep. We did not fill the position. We just, quite frankly, now you think about it, our revenues have dropped in those years. I'm going to show that to you. But if you think about it, when you went to the cafe, or not cafe, because that's a good thing, but when you went to the yacht club or the club or something, you had that experience, you didn't come back. Part of it's just people overworked and underpaid. We just didn't have staff to support it. Easy to say, well, let's close up. So guess what? I don't have the cost if we're closed. The yacht club's a big part of it. We're closed for 4 or 5 months. Of course it's going to be lower. So when you look at that bottom line number, it's not as aggressive as it was reported. Oh my God, it's way out there. We're really not way out there. We're open for business. Let's talk about this. This was interesting. Again, history is great. These are factional, and so Mr. Gonsack says over and over, Bob, you can't change these. These are what they are. So great, guess what? I'm going to highlight them because I think they're important facts. Non-assessment related revenues. Make sure you understand, non-assessment means does not include what you pay. These are revenues generated otherwise, either revenues for the yacht club, revenues from all other sources. The only 2 exceptions, road funds, which I pulled out by design. Here's why. We have no idea what the road funds are going to be. We have a dramatic decrease in road funds. It would be unfair to try to compare that. It confuses the number. Pull that out. Even over the last 10 years, I pulled that number out. Makes sense not to have it in there. Okay? And the bulkhead was the other thing, correct? Bulkhead, we didn't include it. Separate issue. So, interesting fact on this. Okay? These are our actual revenues, not including what you pay. This has nothing to do with how much the check you or I strove to pay for it. Here's our revenues. Here's our revenues. Oh, we start cutting, and what happens? Everything drops. Here's where our average revenues end up. Our budget shows for this. Very, very different when you're looking at really how does this impact us. Really easy to say 820 is a horrible number. Truth of the matter is, I'm more than covering that cost in the revenue opportunities that these employees generate by being open for business and looking at things differently. Non-assessment. This has nothing to do with how much you struck the check for. Everybody understand that, right? $4,117,000 was last year's revenue number in the budget. You can open the book and look. If you don't believe me, Mr. Clark, I'm sure has the book and can look for it.
That's non-assessment?
Yes. 4,951,000 is where our projected is. And everywhere it shows how it's done. Let's look at our funding. Again, I'm giving you all the pieces of cover the employees. Now let's talk about reserve funding. Okay?
Could you go back that for just a second?
Sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Reserve funding. Okay, your assessment, where do some of the dollars go? I want to show you what this budget includes in reserve funding. You know, folks say, oh, you're spending it. I'm not spending it. I'm very conservative by nature with other people's money. That's part of my financial background. You know, so when folks are looking at, oh my God, you spent. I'm not. I'm conservative. Here's where some of your money goes. We have funded deficit reduction fund, one of our reserve replacement funds. We've increased funding to it of $101,000 for this year's budget. Roads, increased, this is your assessment, your funding, $155,000 goes into the roads budget. Keep in mind, we didn't have to do that before we're getting county funding. But part of what the board challenged me with is follow the 5-year plan and be cognizant of roads. What will we do? Carve out some funding for it. $822,000 for bulkhead. Lastly, $2,354,000 go into the general replacement fund, reserve replacement fund. Okay, this is, you'll be able to answer at the end.
I just wanted to know if that was bulkheads owned by ODA or is that the private bulkhead?
That's both, right? Bulkhead? That's both. And that's like a pass-through.
Well, ODA bulkhead funding should be in replacement.
They support, I didn't want to confuse the issues. I clearly, everything I did was,
But the issue is the private bulkhead funding is paid for by people.
that's what's a pass-through. Completely agree. What he's talking about is those that live on waterfront that have bulkhead pay a higher amount for the bulkhead. But truth of the matter, we all pay a portion for the bulkheads over and above that takes care of all the common areas.
And that should be the replacement one. I know it is.
That's how it's reported. So I'm going for transparency, sticking to how we report. But truth of the matter is, overall, part of my budget, all in, $3.4 million into some sort of reserve funding. We'll get questions at the end, Marty.
Just that number, 2354140, is different from what I have in my book by 300,000.
Peter talked to it, and where, I can tell you where it is, okay? My initial slide that you saw had golf drainage, yeah, no, I understand, golf drainage, but it's now been included there, you notice it's not a separate slice of the pie. That's where it is, Marty. There's a reason I'll let Pete talk to it. There's some accounting stuff, and I got to tell you, going through this, you know, even at the bank when I saw all the budgets, I always had accountants that did all that stuff. They have terminology, and you kind of go, really? So somehow there was a reporting difference, all right? And you both know what I'm talking about, because I scratch my head and go, ugh. But in real numbers for the rest of us, that really is the total amount that we're putting away in reserve funding. Pretty good amount to be putting away for future investments, i.e. investments not investing in stock market, investments in our infrastructure. Very, very important to me, very important to the board. We took it real serious when we built our guidance here. Budget. Here's some facts I want to take away before I turn this over to Mr. Gonsack, because I think this is an important fact to point out. Payroll increase is $820,000. I'm not hiding about that number. That's a good number for me because I think that I've justified it in my mind. The board has to make a decision. You folks have to make a decision. However, that's 0.08% of the entire budget. 0.08, not a big number when you look at that. Sounds like a big number when you go from 79 to 75 is what my request is in total employees. It's still far below the average of what we've had for the last 10 years in the association. Extended hours. This is a huge number, and I've recomputed this several ways. I actually had to be conservative and bring it down some. And the reason I did, I didn't want anybody to go, oh, wait a minute. If you add the hours of operation that we've extended, i.e. the Java Bay opens at 6 a.m., aquatics covered pool stays open till 10, the extended hours here until 10 p.m. All these are for each individual. I told you things that we're doing in each. They add up to over 7,000 hours of additional operating time. If we're open for business, I have the opportunity to create revenue. If I have the opportunity to create revenue, I can create profits. I'm telling you folks, my budget includes 7,000 plus hours in additional hours of operation for the organization. With that, we believe we will have a minimum, and some board members are going to take something different, not necessarily to a negative for our side, a minimum of a 20% projected increase in revenues, non-assessment created, revenues driven through the initiatives and such. Interesting when you look at it, 833 versus the 820 overall budget. Okay, these are budget to budget numbers. Exactly what I was held to task for by the Budget and Finance Committee, exactly what I've reported here. Okay? Reserve funding has increased to 3.4, and from your contributions, your assessment, we've increased it almost $3.5 million. Real proud of that in the budget. So when those folks tell me I've spent too much, I've done this, I've showed how I'm going to generate revenue, where the money's going to go. Now, part of the concern is how the money's spent. Part of the concern is how what type of buckets do they go in. And Mr. Gomsak's going to explain that in far greater detail so you understand the reserve components and those type of things. Prior to him stepping up, does anyone have any questions for me about the first portion, and not real detailed because I don't have my book, but overall questions? And I'll be happy to get after this, sit down and talk with anybody. Okay, Marty, your hand was first.
I have, see if you get anybody else to come back with me, because I have.
Yes, sir.
You're showing $820,000 that you want to spend for increased revenue on salaries.
Yes, sir.
And then you're showing that your net increase in profitability is going to be $833,000.
Yes, sir.
Which gives you $13,000 profit.
Yes.
Now, for $13,000, you're adding a whole lot of liability to this community with these expanded hours of operation and employees.
Okay.
That's not justifiable.
But I'm in the green, so to me it's justifiable.
Why not?
You're going to have all these extra chances where somebody can take it.
But you're going to have more people using it too.
That's it.
You only got 13,000.
My job is to provide the opportunity for you folks, quality of life, opportunity to do business. All right. I tell you what I'll do, just so it doesn't, because we're going to have a lot of debate, which is good. I'm going to ask Mr. Gomsak to do his part, and then we'll do public comments so it's on record, so everyone can, not just folks here, but everyone can see what it means from folks looking at this, from afar. I.e. the folks who live across the bridge, they're assigned on either internet or what have you. So I'll ask you to hold them. I will be here to answer any questions. Marty, I'm going to ask you
I
for
don't
that.
want to get too far away from the slideshow.
The slideshow won't go away. It'll be here.
Well, I will. I'm going to go away.
Okay.
I'm not going to do question and answers now. I'm going to sit here for another hour.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Mr. Gomsak.
We'll take up to the brakes,
Nope.
flag wired up and stuff.
I say we'll keep pressing.
Okay.
Takes me 2 seconds.
Stand in place for a minute. How long is your presentation? Not as long as loud. No, roughly how long? Maybe 30. Just hold up. Where's the name? Okay. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Moving right along. Let people settle down here for a minute. Where's Joe Reynolds? There he is. Okay. All right, I was asked to do the reserves portion of the budget. And some of you may know I have an accounting background, although it's been some years since I've practiced. Retired 12 years ago, so keep my hand in it. This whole area of reserves, we have used this in the past, and I think it really displays very vividly in a photograph before and after that reserves do indeed work. What we have here is the old community hall, which you'll see later on the original cost of that building, and it was replaced with this building that we're in right now, $1,750,000 later. Can you hear me?
It's going in and out.
I think if I stand close to this,
No, don't stand under that speaker right over your head. Move over where Bob was.
is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay. The reserves and depreciation significantly impact assessment levels. As non-accountants, this depreciation stuff can be confusing. Some people think it's tax oriented. It's not. It's not some theoretical thing. And it does indeed affect your assessments each year to a fairly significant degree. And I'll explain later on how that works, sort of an educational thing on depreciation. So stick with me here. Go to sleep if you wish. But it does affect your assessment. In fact, the $853 proposed in this year's budget, as you can see, includes $334 in reserve funding. And that's up from $302 in the current year 2011 budget. $32. You recognize the number of 808. That's the assessment that was levied for this year. And $853 in the proposed budget. Again, depreciation is a significant piece of the $302 this year and the $334. So it's not some hypothetical, theoretical thing. Right, Gene? Okay, a little background, and then we'll get into the numbers of Ocean Pine's actual budget. But a little background for those of you. Anyway, we've done this before, other presentations, 10-year plan task force, last year's budget presentation the year before, and we'll repeat it again. OPA has significant physical assets. They actually exceed $34 million in cost. We don't know what it's going to cost to replace them. We know that we paid $34 million for all of our assets, from trucks to this building. These assets, each and every one of them has a useful life, during which time they deteriorate, wear out, become obsolete, etc. What we ask you to do, because we have no other source for it, is to pay for that in your assessment. The assets include buildings, parking lots, pools, vehicles, furniture, figures, all manner of things. Pool chairs, umbrellas, computers, whatever. The historic method of funding the capital asset acquisition is through various reserve accounts. The major maintenance and repair costs or replacement of assets is through the replacement reserve account. That's the most significant reserve account, and that's the one I'm going to focus on, is the replacement reserve account. The funding of other capital accounts, as Bob mentioned a moment ago, we've got roads where we used to get this money from the state. We haven't gotten it in the last couple of years and not expecting it this year. And the bulkheads, where essentially it's a pass-through from the property owners who have bulkhead. There's a bulkhead differential, and that essentially goes into that reserve account, and then we spend from that account. So it doesn't build up a bunch of reserves. It's sort of in one year and out the same year. As Gene Ringsgrove pointed out, there's a small slice of that that is community-owned property, and that's built into your assessment. It's a very small amount. Capital assets, when acquired, and this is the most important concept I can leave you with today about depreciation and Ocean Pine. When we acquire capital assets, they're recorded as an asset and not an expense. The expense is recognized after they're put on the books, and we depreciate that asset over its useful life, whether it be 4 years, or 10 years, or 40 years in the case of this building. And that's the depreciation charge that directly affects your membership assessment. So once we spend the money out of the reserve account, we don't bill you for it. However, we start to bill you for it in your dues the year after we buy that asset. And you'll see some examples here. This is just a picture of where the $34 million really is, and breaks it between the depreciable amount and the non-depreciable. Land doesn't depreciate, so we don't depreciate it. Everything else, however, has a useful life. At the end of some period of time, 10, 40, 50 years, you got to replace it, just like your car, just like buildings, and just all the old community hall. So the breakdown here is some of the buildings and improvements. Need not get into that. You do see the construction in progress at the community center. Again, this is April 30th, 2010. At that point in time, April 30th, 2010, this building was still under construction. It wasn't quite complete. Okay? And therefore, you don't depreciate it while it's under construction. But once it hits the rolls, then we start to depreciate it. So your 2012 proposed budget dues reflects your piece of this community center building. We didn't ask you to pay for it when it was built. We're going to ask you to pay for it as it depreciates over time. Reserve funding. The cost of major maintenance repairs of capital assets and ultimately their replacement has to be paid by the OPA membership. We have no other source, ladies and gentlemen, it's us. As I've commented before, we don't have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to do it for us, okay? We have to do it ourselves. Certain asset, I've already said this, it's sort of a pass-through, bulkhead, and so forth. Other capital assets, we have to fund those through the replacement reserve account. Now, the depreciation that I talked about earlier is a fair amount of money. It's $1,646,000 right there in FY 2011. That's this year we're in. And in next year's budget, it's only up $50,000. Again, each year some assets become fully depreciated. You'll see an example of that with our F-250 truck example. And others continue on, so are added to the roll. So in any given year, a particular asset may go off the rolls and no longer require depreciation, affecting your assessment, but others come on and do affect it. We have a 41-page detailed fixed asset ledger that I brought as a prop, but I need not get into that. The assessment dollars for depreciation are transferred into the reserve account and increase assessments each year. So the piece of the dues that you saw earlier, I call it dues, assessments, same thing. We put that immediately into the reserve account, and it builds up over time, and then we spend it for the replacement asset. That's the way it works. And again, the last point here in blue, when capital asset purchases are made, payment comes out of the reserve account and does not affect assessments in that year. It will start to the next year. Our F-250 example, understanding depreciation. That was Bob's terminology for this slide, so hopefully I can live up to his expectations. He keeps telling me, Pete, don't talk over their heads, don't talk into the account, talk in layman's language. So this is layman's language, this is F-250.
I won't be able to understand.
Gene, you're an expert. We chose this as an example, and it is a real life example. This is one of the assets that's in this year's budget. We have 3 vehicles in this year's budget, 2 F-150s and 1 F-250, right? Correct. And he had a substitute photograph, right? You get the right photo in here? I wouldn't know. So this is a real live example. In this year's budget is an expenditure for $23,000, I beg your pardon, $35,000 for this vehicle. There are 3 such vehicles down after 100 grand. Well, I'm going to show you one here. Well, that replaces a vehicle that we bought, the year's not there, but
10 years ago.
2001.
Yeah.
2001. We bought that vehicle for $23,000 in 2001, and here's what we did. We had a 5-year life on it. Vehicles generally have a 5-year life. And so we started putting it into the reserve account, and part of your bill, by each one of you chipped in 50 cents for this one. 50 cents of your assessment in that year, and that year, and that year, and that year, and that year went into our reserve fund. Okay? 50 cents times $8,442 is roughly $4,600. All right? So that's great. We've accumulated now at the end of 5 years our whole cost of that vehicle. Oh, and another good news is we didn't just trade it in then after 5 years. Ocean Pines has a policy of depreciating it according to its useful life, but running it as long as it's serviceable and worthwhile and makes economic sense to do so. This particular example, we kept this for another 5 years. Well, we had no more depreciation on it, so your 50 cents stopped after that year because you really fully paid for the original cost of $23,000. So your 50 cents, 50 cents, 50 cents became zero. But look what happens. We got another 5 years out of it. We got a total of 10 years, or 11, however you count. But now we have to pay what? 35 grand. How much we got in the bank account for that particular vehicle? We've got 23. We've got a little problem. We're 12,000 short. Okay? So, anyway, that's the RF 250 example. Dick?
Pete, I mean, I hear what you're saying, if we put that $23,000 there, don't we get some kind of an investment cost that, you know, we make some money on
You
that?
mean return on it?
Huh?
You mean investment return, interest return?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You put it in a bank, you put it in a savings
I mean, the
account.
concept is fine, but that's not really true.
Excellent question, I'll get to it in a minute.
Thank you very much.
I will absolutely, it's a key part of why we're here where we are today. Okay. The scheduled reserve accounts, this is just, again, the point here is the main part of it is this big deal you do down here, the replacement reserve, okay? The deficit recovery, that's our $4 of the $30 in the 5-year plan up there. The parking, we have to make up for $500,000, you'll see it in a moment. Bulk goes in and out, road maintenance used to come from the state, it's not coming anymore, golf drainage, but and the big thing is the replacement. Okay, here's a 10-year running total for the replacement reserve account. 10 years worth of ins and outs. Going back to 2001, first of the 10 years depicted on the schedule. This is your depreciation. That theoretical 50 cents that you all put in, the $4,600 that the whole association has for the F-250 to recapture the $23,000 that we paid for it. We put that in, and all manner of assets. So every single asset in this community, not just the F-250 truck, we made a very specific detailed calculation, and there it is, essentially, and put it into this separate fund. Now, each year you put depreciation in for all your assets, but each year you spend out of those assets, right? And that's in accordance with budget. Each year, Bob and his predecessors, you know, this is the way we do it. You have a capital budget, capital expenditure budget. It could include a racket club, a pool deck. It could include a backhoe, which I understand is in this year's budget, 100 grand. All manner of things come out. So each year you put money in for contributions, dues, your money. We have interest, Dick, and I'll come back to that in a second, and we have expenditure. So over 10 years, we put $12,390,000 in. We've had $220,000 in interest, and we took out $12 million. We ended up after 10 years about where we started in the year 2000. We have $1,500,000. Everybody see that? $1,592,000 at the beginning up there, 2001. We put the money in for depreciation. We took the money out for the capital expenditures. What we were left with was this. Okay, we got a problem at this point. We got a real problem. We don't have nearly enough in the reserve account to cover the replacement cost of our assets. Okay, so what do we do about it? A couple of years ago, the Budget and Finance Committee, which I was part of, made a recommendation to the board. The board accepted that recommendation and implemented it 2 years ago in the budget process. And that's the magic $30 fund, $30 a year increase. It actually calculated out to 90. If we had assessed everybody in that particular year $90, that would have been raised about $4 million we needed to cover $500,000 in deficit and the rest for what we thought would be major projects. We understood, and the board understood, that this $2 million, $1.7 million back then, wasn't nearly sufficient to face the daunting physical asset expenditures that we were going to have to make in the coming years. And you can debate whether the yacht club is $2 million or $1 million or $2.5 million or what. Those are decisions that have yet to be made. The country club, what are we going to do with that? Well, I don't care what possible scenario you have, $1.7 million isn't enough. So what we did was create a supplemental funding vehicle to supplement the depreciation that's going into that. So Marty Clark, who's left the building, asked the question earlier, well, how come in this particular year, Well, it's a combination of two things. So we're putting into this now in the 2011 year and the 2010 year started. The first year of what we call the 5-year funding plan has a component, and frankly, it's $30 minus the $4 for deficit recovery equals $26. If you get your math, you can put your calculator in, that $26 of that extra assessment of 30 went right into here. And next year, the year we're in, another 30, bring it to 60. And in this year's budget, it's year 3 of the 5-year plan, we've got another 30. And we're tracking it, both the inflow and the outflow. We're keeping track of every single dollar of that $26 that goes in there and comes out of there. Because it's intended not to cover the F-250s and not the new chairs at the pool, the big ticket items, as we call them. The big ticket items. The $1 million for this, the $500,000 for that. Because there's no way that was going to see us clear to do that. Okay. So in this year's budget, down at the bottom, we have literally $2,354,000. Two things, your depreciation, the depreciation, plus the piece of this special $30 fund. Okay? Our current situation, again, I've covered most of the concepts in here, I think. We set aside dues to pay for the replacement reserve. This stick goes to one of the question you raised earlier. Well, Pete, why do we only have $2 million? What happened to the money? How come we don't have enough for replacement? Well, here are the reasons. Number one, I got a kick out of that small, we could change it later, that's nice. But anyway, the first reason is that we failed to provide for inflationary cost increases. That depreciation is based on the historical cost of that F-250 and every other asset we have, including this building. So we were not providing for inflation. So we have a built-in inherent deficiency in the formula, if you will. Second thing was, my prime example last year and the year before was this building we're in. It cost $364 all in. And that's what we got from Boise Cascade, plus renovations that we made that were depreciable over time. The total cost basis for you accountants in the room was $364,000. Well, we spent $1,750,000. Where'd the difference come from? The difference had to come out of the accumulated depreciation and other assets. So each time we would have a replacement to fund something that costs less, we would increase the problem. Okay, another reason. I would submit to you, I wasn't around back then, but I've heard that we didn't put enough money into some of those physical facilities. And I'm talking about buildings in particular. I'm not talking about backhoes and police cars. I'm talking about, again, the major things. I've heard that they were not, well, and I guess this is the old community hall. Anybody here familiar with the old community hall and its physical nature at the time? Sure. Wasn't in very good shape, was it? Okay. Anyway, to the extent that you deferred maintenance on physical assets, it saved you some expenditures and maybe kept the assessment at a lower level than it would have been otherwise. And I understand there was a lot of pressure around here to keep those assessments low. I may be wrong, I don't think so. Okay, so with pressure from the community to keep the assessments not increasing, we hear a lot of those voices today, and we understand them, and we're sympathetic to them. We'd like to, but we have a problem we have to deal with as a community. And I represent, as my fellow board members do, 8,442 members. Not 100 or 200 or whatever it is. We have to do what's the right thing. Okay, the last thing, Dick, directly to your question, all the interest income on the funding in that replacement reserve fund, the accumulated depreciation, was spent in operations until 2008. Bill Zawacki, excuse me. I don't mean to offend you, but Bill Zawacki was the initiator of that change, and Ray recalls that. He was a board member at the time, right, Ray?
That's right.
But up until that time in 2008, Dick and others, we only put into the fund the depreciation based on the cost with no inflation. I was recalling to some folks when we were up in Hartford, Connecticut back in the period of 76 to 81, and I created some college funds for my kids. I was getting 20% on a Paine Webber money market account back then. You all remember that environment, don't you? I think Jimmy Carter was president. High inflation, high interest. What did Ocean Pines do with the 18% interest that it earned on the funds those years?
Spin it.
It moved it over to operations and spent it. It didn't spend the depreciation. It preserved the depreciation, but the interest stick got spent. All right, that policy changed in 2008. That's why you saw on the earlier slide. See it there?
I'm good.
See it?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm glad you asked the question because it's a key component of why we are where we
I'm
are.
good right now.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, what happens is now we create this plan, the 5-year plan as is known, and this budget is year number 3 of that 5-year plan. And that's here. It's based on the, fine, we got through that. So we envisioned a scenario whereby over the period of 5 years, we could raise about $4 million to this special assessment of, I call it special assessment, call it what you will. It's an additional $30 above and beyond what otherwise would have been. And that was going to, you know, the then identified project, I was part of the effort to do that, but we really didn't know what the needs were going to be. The 10-year plan task force is then created. And frankly, the 10-year plan task force didn't even exist at the time this plan, this formula, this conceptual problem-solving thing was created. When it got to work, and its charge by the then board was to examine all of the major assets in our community. And again, it wasn't about the police cars and the F-250s, and it was the major physical assets. Our yacht club, our swimming racket club, our beach club, our country club. Take a look at all those assets, assess its condition, make some judgments about what has to be done and when, and by the way, come up with a cost estimate the best you can. It did that. Granted, some very rough estimates in some cases. It became very refined estimates when it got to the yacht club. They actually would have to bid based on the specs that the task force had created. Those bids came back. We selected Lehman Construction, not Lehman Brothers. I always say Lehman Brothers, but I've corrected myself. It's Lehman Construction. And you all know, we had public hearings on this, they made the presentation, and we're in the $2.5 million range for that building. Well, we've put that off for the moment. The problem hadn't gone away. The need hadn't gone away. There will be intense debate going forward as to whether or not we spend this amount of money or that amount of money. The fact of it is, we're going to spend a whole bunch of money on it. Okay, so we're continuing to collect. People say, well, why are you still collecting the money? Because we need it. Okay, I can't tell you exactly in what year, but I'll show you that later on. Okay, so the original list that the committee came up with, I mentioned was about $4 million. We're up to $6.7 million now. 800 of it's already been spent. Out of that additional, in the first 2 years of the $30 fund increase, $30 dues increase, we've spent all the money. We literally have spent in excess of what has been put into that separate component of the reserve replacement fund. I'll show you where. Here, a little expansion of the F-250 scenario. I mentioned that we have literally in our budget 3 vehicles that comprise 100,000, 97 actually, and then there's another 100,000 in backhoe. These are real needs in this year's budget and the budget. Again, the expenditure of this $197,000 for these 3 vehicles and the backhoe doesn't affect your assessment at all. We're taking it out of the reserve fund. You'll pay for it going forward. But look what happens. I gave you the example of the 250, 23, we had a gap of 11, right? The other 150, F-150, we had a gap of 14, cost versus the actual replacement. And then in the, so the 3 of those vehicles, we put aside in depreciation over time $53,924. Because that was, yeah, please, Tom. Because that was the cost. Good for us. Well, not good for us when you have a shortfall when it comes time to replace, okay? The backhoe is even more dramatic. June 00 cost 48 grand, it's going to cost 100 now, shortfall 51,000. I don't think this is an accounting concept. I think this is a real dollar concept. If you put money aside for your daughter's wedding or your kid's education and it turns out that it's 3 times what you thought, you don't have the money there to pay for. Okay, community center, we got the precise numbers. I've been using round numbers historically for 300,000. It's $364,160. And put aside the reserve account from depreciation was $337,000. We spent $1,750,000. Shortfall was $1,400,000. $1,400,000. Now, if you take it for the whole association and go back to our $34 million in depreciable assets, I'm sorry, $30 million depreciable, 34 total plus depreciable. We have $30 million in cost. We've spent this money, we're sitting in almost $2 million of it, the administration building, the police vehicles, the dump truck, everything we have. It cost us $30 million. And we depreciate that. And we have accumulated depreciation on those assets. This is an accountant's concept, but it's more than an accountant's concept. It's putting the money aside based on the cost of what it is you bought. And we put aside $16 million on those people. All right, how much should we have in the bank? We should have $16 million if you're just doing the depreciable cost, right? Guess what? We got $2 million. So where's the money go? Well, I went, repeat that F-250 and that backhoe over and over and over again, and that community center over again over a period of 30, 40 years. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Just to recover the cost of those physical assets, we need $16 million and we got less than $2 million. Do we have a problem? Okay, we can solve it. Part of the solution is the $30 fund, okay? And again, that's the big ticket items. The swim club, yacht club. But that's over. Now, this is not replacement value. Does anybody think that we can replace those assets for anywhere near the cost of them? I don't think so. We already saw in the backhoe case, and the F-250 case, and the F-150 case. So, we're going to get to this concept that what Bob was talking about, the fire department. This concept we're going to play out working with the fire department over the next little while, very short, but we've agreed each concept. What has to happen, the accountants now have to kind of push it forward a little bit, right, Bob? Yes. And, but this is going to be a good test case for us because there they only have like 10 assets. It's $1 million vehicle here and a $700, in a building. So we have 41 pages. What do we have, Art? Over 1,000 items, I'm sure, in 41 pages. Here's my prop. This is every asset owned by Ocean Pines. Down to, I'll just read here. Anybody wants to glance at it later on. Okay. The 5-year funding plan is part of the solution to the bigger issue. It's a piece of it. It's a good piece of it. We need to continue it this budget year 2012 is year 3. Why is my dues going up? Well, $30 of it is part of the plan. $30 increase, $30.45 increase. All right, increase the replacement reserve account by $500,000. This is go back to what was adopted back in 2009. We had intended to do a couple of things with this $30 increase. Number one was increase the, I went too quickly there. Increase the replacement reserve. By historical standards, we said, we spend about $1,250,000 a year around here on all this stuff. Not a building, obviously, but stuff. I mean, good job, It's the chairs, it's the beach things, it's the police cars, it's the backhoe, all that stuff that I showed you earlier. Amounted to what, about $10 million over about a 10-year period of time? We were spending about $1,250,000 a year out of the reserve fund. All right, we said, if we just had 2 years, forget about the replacement. We can't bite off $30 million now or $20 million or something. But let's try and get that thing up to at least 2 years worth of normal, and then let's deal in a different way with the abnormal, the big ticket items. So, okay, $500,000 we said we need for that. Fine. Then we also need, and this is important language, this is 2 years ago language when the board embraced this concept. Provide additional replacement reserves to fund significant capital expenditures to be incurred over the next 5 years, i.e. yacht club, country club, swimmer racket club, and beach club. Original estimate was $2.8 million out of the box. Again, before the 10-year plan task force was even convened. 10-year plan task force convenes. Lo and behold, we're up to $6 to $7 million now and still going. Oh, by the way, that road funding, we may have to incorporate that into it Because Bob and I and the board don't see any time soon coming $500,000 that we get every year from the state. So we need to address that. We don't have it specifically in here, but it's certainly in our thinking. Hopefully the political solution will be, and I do understand the state of Maryland has been sued by 2 counties, because this is state of Maryland funds and our road taxes. It's called liquid fuels tax. We pay it at the gas pump every time we pump up. You pay a federal tax, and you pay a state tax. The state tax gets distributed back to people, us, based on where we live and to the county. The state of Maryland has used those monies, $500,000 a year for the last 2 years and now third year, for other things because of the state's budget policy. But the political pressure has to be created, and I've said this before, but what's new is the 2 counties, I understand, have brought a lawsuit against the state of Maryland to get those funds. I think in the future, not the past. Okay. And the $500,000, everybody I think by this time knows $4 of the 30 goes to that deficit recovery, $500,000. We had accumulated, just so you know, 2007, 2008, 2009, our operating deficit, our operating revenues together with assessments did not cover all of our expenses. It's like you overdrawing your checking account, all right? We overdrew our checking account, and quite frankly, it was just sitting there as a negative balance in our checking account. It's reported each year on the balance sheet, operating fund deficit, and then you take the reserve accounts, and everybody look at what we had in the savings accounts with the reserve accounts. Well, if you've got 2 accounts at your bank, one's a savings account, and the other's a checking account, and you've got, in our case, $2 million in the savings account, and $500,000 overdrawn in your checking account, the bank doesn't care. It's got $1.5 million of your money, right? But you can't tell people you got $2 million, and we didn't. So directly offsetting that $2 million in our reserve accounts was a $500,000 overdrawn checking account. Well, we on the Budget and Finance Committee, I think I joined you that year, said we need to do something about this. And so what we did about it was said, you know what, let's wrap this into the future 5-year plan, and let's get rid of this over a 5-year period of time. We can't increase the assessment in 1 year to wipe out a accumulated deficit over a period. So let's do it in a rational way. So that $30 increase a year was intended for $4 of this and $26 for the big ticket items. And voila, after 5 years we'll have $2 million, except now we need 8. Okay, here it is. This was the original plan, and it's still in effect. The $30 by now, I think most people, and certainly the press understands it because they've reported this pretty accurately and pretty consistent. $30. 2 components, 26 and 4, 26 and 4, 26 and 4. I think most people get it now, right? If not, see our paper. Then we said, well, you know what, that's just this piece that we're trying to address with the big ticket items. Still got to operate yacht club and beach club and police and fire and all that sort of stuff. So we made an assumption up here that the increase should be moderated in light of the $30. You know, what really was an appropriate level for us to increase in this community at this time, recognizing the financial difficulties, stress that people were having. We had to balance acting responsibly to shore up some of our problems, while at the same time being considerate and mindful of people who are struggling, who may have lost jobs, who may have fixed incomes, et cetera, et cetera. So we said, let's limit the operating part to 2% a year. 2% a year, and that's what that is. That $15 is nothing more. Now again, this was done back in 2009, a couple years ago. We said, let's moderate, because we got to do this $30 million to raise $4 million. Let's put into the 5-year plan a moderated, and those of you who've been here for a while will understand that from time to time, those increases were $30. Many years there were no increases, and you know that, those of you who've been around for a while. But when there were increases, sometimes it'd be 30, sometimes it'd be 40. 1 year it was $150, right? And that's a whole other issue because some of that was going for the reserve accounts. But the normal operating expense, we said, let's limit that to 2%. That, quite frankly, put pressure on the general manager. Because he doesn't have the discretion to do anything with that $30. We're putting that aside in the bank account. He cannot spend that other than for the designated items identified by the 10-year plan task force. Bob Thompson has no control over that other than to come to the board and say, all right, I want to fund now the yacht club this year. We'll debate that and decide what the right answer is. We need to go to the community for a referendum, we'll do that, right? In the meantime, we got to collect the money. Otherwise, we have no options, except a loan or a one-time big assessment, and we don't think that's the right answer. So that's how we got to where we are, and again, we're in good old year 3, and this is it. What we tried to do was keep this thing in the 5% range. Yes, 5.9 here, and 5.6, and 5.3, and 5.0, but in that range. And again, it's two-part. I've used the word sacrosanct here recently to describe the $30 fund, because nobody's going to touch that for anything other than what it's intended for. Now, we got an IRS issue, we got to deal with that, and we'll figure that out going forward. The 10-year plan, and I'm wrapping up here. The 10-year plan I mentioned is now up to, $6-7 million. Here's where it started. Column 1, I thought this would be helpful, and I've done this from time to time, by the way, in other public presentations. Some people say, what's the plan? I don't know anything about it. Well, go back and look at some of the videos of the budget presentations last 2 years. Look at the 10-year plan presentation that Ted Maroney and I did this time last year. Look in the newspaper, Tom Stauss published the whole thing over time. So this has been around for a while, but let me just remind you, we thought back then that this is what we needed, out of the box. Again, before the 10-year plan task force even came into being, we identified 192 wood duct drainage was staring at. The board made a decision. Let's fix the wood duct drainage problem. Okay? The board was facing then, which we felt we found was not as imminent as we thought it was going to be, some major bridge repairs. It would be $800,000 and 10% backer for engineering for 2 bridges. There were problems. Well, as it turned out, as we spent more time, the board spent more time, management spent more time, 2 things happened. Number 1, the imminence of it wasn't quite what was originally thought to be, so it got pushed out. It didn't go away, it just got pushed out. And secondly, the major thing is, we approached the county about having them taken into their inventory and having us qualify for 80/20 county funding. That's down the bottom. That is significant. So the project didn't go away, the funding shifted 80% to the county out of funds that they have available to the bridge. So it is now, they've taken the formal action a year or so ago to put it in inventory. It's now county responsibility, it qualifies for the 80/20 split. So that's what happened. I hear one of our former directors constantly say, well, what happened to the $800,000 for the bridges? Well, it's still there, but our cost is now only $100,000 per bridge instead. So the point of this is a constantly changing list and a constantly changing estimate. The Country Club building, the most recent estimate, and it goes to 610, June 10, started out at $1.2 million, it became a more recent estimate of $2 million. What are we going to spend? That remains to be seen. It isn't zero. The yacht club, we thought, $500,000. I say we, again before the 10-year plan task force was even organized. Once it got organized under the direction of Ted Maroney and Bill Rayco and 7 other people, and began to do some serious work, that estimate was revised last up to $2.5 million, and you all know this because that, again, I presented. In fact, we had actually Lehman make a public presentation in this building, if you all recall, some of you were here. Again, no action has been decided. If it's a $2.5 million, it's got to go to referendum. Right now, we're still evaluating how to proceed with it, but the problem hasn't gone away. And so forth. So this beach club bathhouse is pretty interesting. I'm sorry, that's the one there was 0 before, that was 0. All these were zeros before, but now after the 10-year plan task force convenes and spends about 1.5 years, its list is now $6.7 million, $6,689,000. Oh, by the way, they know that over a 10-year period, there's some more stuff that's got to be financed, including perhaps, as I say in the footnote here, I thought, roads. We don't know, we may have to start, if we're not successful in getting that money back from the state, we just can't ignore the resurfacing of our roads. We got to deal with it. We can't deal with it out of the normal replacement reserve fund, not enough money in it. So we have to deal with it perhaps out of the same fund. So that's the whole concept. Constantly changing as we get more information, get more refined estimates, this will be updated. 10-year plan task force is being reorganized, 2 elements, the planning function and the project function. And here in the coming months, that will get I think, rebooted, and we'll be moving forward. Right, Bob? Boards have approved that reorganization. Major facility, here is the extension of what you just saw a moment ago. We used to have each one of these projects was prioritized and put into a nice year column. 2012, 2013, 2000. That was a plan. You know, still had to be approved and so forth. Well, the task force hasn't met since last June. And some of the timeline we have for some of the expenditures is no longer applicable. Frankly, we had some expenditures in this year, 2011, and others in 2012. Yacht Club being the most significant of them. Well, we put a hold on that. So what I did in the next slide was to say, it's not up to me, and it's not up to the 10-year plan task force. The 10-year plan task force will have to reconvene and then sort out once again what makes sense, both from the need standpoint as well as the monies available. I believe this is the last slide I've done. What I attempted to do was to show you where we've been. The $26, we put that in year one in 2010. $219,000 of your money went into that separate bank account, which we call Special Projects of the Replacement Reserve Account. This has nothing to do with depreciation, ladies and gentlemen. This has to do with, let's put money aside for the big ticket items that we know and keep the depreciation flowing into historically to fund the major part. Okay. Next year, the year we're in, 2011, the board approved budget included the second installment of that. We had another 438. So at the end of 2 years, we put in 658. Look what we've taken out. 788. I made the comment earlier, we've spent all the money that has been put into that bank account from your additional assessment in years 1 and 2. Here we are in year 3. And yes, this year, 3, it's $78 because it's 26 plus 26 plus 26. Okay, well, how much is that, Pete? Well, it's $658,000. What are you going to do with it, Pete? We're going to put it into the fund. And by the way, deferring any, as I said a moment ago, we have no expenditures, Bob's budget has no expenditures for any of those big ticket items that are on that list that I showed you earlier. Nothing for the yacht club, nothing for the country club, none. We're deferring them. They haven't gone away, but we're not going to fund them. And by the way, the funding of them doesn't affect your assessment. What affects your assessment is our putting the money aside. Okay? And we're not, this plan does not contemplate stopping that plan, nor would I ever agree with that we ought to do that. I know times are tough and all this sort of stuff, but we have to keep doing this. Okay, so at the end of 3 years, Bob's got it parked over in the bank, Ocean Clients Association has parked in the bank. We're in deficit right now. We've spent $100 more than we put in it, okay? But at the end of this year, we'll catch up and we'll have indeed $500 million. And we'll go forward from there. I took, the 2 projects, by the way, in case you don't know, there are only 2 projects that we've spent. There's the wood duct drainage project, and again, I think you saw that up here. That was originally estimated at $192. Well, the project cost $300. On the other hand, we had no idea in our priorities back then that the swim and racket club decks and pool needed the work it needed. We then subsequently allocated $500,000 to that, getting under budget by 11. So we actually spent $489 and $300. We spent $789. 2 completed projects. And there you see that $789, okay? There it is. Now here we are. Go ahead to year 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17. We don't know when the monies are going to be spent. So what I did here recently, just arbitrarily said, what if we just allocated the remainder of the needs that have been established by the 10-year plan task force and just evenly spread it over the remaining period of time? That's how you get $1.2 million, $1.2 million, $1.1 million, $1.2 million, $1.2 million. Just arbitrarily said, look, what if it were evenly spread? What would that do for us? Well, at the end of the 8 years cumulative, that's this column right here, I'm sorry, this line right here. By that time, we will have accumulated your assessment dollars, $6,584,000 to cover expenditures, capital expenditures of $6,688,000. We're 104 negative there. These are just on the identified projects in a preliminary rough estimate of cost, which will be refined going forward. And then we continue now for another 2 years, years 9 and 10, because we have a 10-year plan task force that's looking at 10 years. And as I said, it acknowledged, I was part of that, it acknowledged that there are other needs that haven't been quite refined. So what happens if we expand this thing out 10 years? This could, at the end of 10 years, we'll have raised about $9 million, and we'll spend about $9 million, and there you have it. That's for future boards to debate, but this is a long-term plan, and I think that's it. It is. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Leave these slides. Before you leave the slides.
Oh, sure.
Can you go back to the slide that showed all the things from 2000 to 2000? Like that, 2 slides, another back. The one that showed 2000 to 2010, and you had,
Oh, the 10-year
yeah, 10 years.
replacement reserve?
Okay, right
That
there.
one?
Okay, right
Yeah,
there.
go ahead.
When Mr. Gumsack mentioned that these contributions were all per budgets and the expenditures were all per budgets, or, you know, in the plan at that time, for edification purposes, why the pool cover is such a subject, that pool cover was never in the contributions, but was in the expenditures. That board that authorized the pool cover expenditure just 2 months, 3 months before, it authorized a capital budget that didn't have the pool cover in it. Right. They decided to spend $1 million. And so it wasn't in the budget, it wasn't in the contributions, but it drained money out of the reserve just a couple of years ago that was intended for other stuff.
Yeah.
So I just thought,
Yeah.
Gene, I understand. Let me respond very briefly to that. I wasn't on the board, so I don't need to be defensive.
No, I'm not-
Yeah.
But I do have an obligation to point out a couple facts. Please. Number one, there was a separate fund created to deal with the pool cover. Am I right, Bart? It was called Future Projects Fund. This is the replacement reserve fund, okay? The board, Gene, authorized putting some monies beyond what went in here into a special projects fund. Future Projects Fund is what they call it. I think they had in mind a couple of things. Part of it was community center, part of it was, I don't know. All I know is that there was a separate, and I'll show it to you after the meeting, okay?
I'm aware of it.
Okay, fine. But my point is that that wasn't ever part of this fund.
all I'm saying.
I understand. And secondly, they borrowed money, by the way. They had to borrow money to pay for the balance, because there wasn't enough in that special projects fund, so they had to borrow money.
All I'm saying is it was
That's
not
fine.
contemplated for a pool cover.
Okay. Thank you.
You're right. I wasn't on the board back then either. While they're passing the microphone back over to Bob to start taking questions on the budget, I just wanted to share a couple thoughts. Came in August last year, about the same time Bob showed up. And without question, we started focusing on revenues. And in the tax world, revenues in the public world, sometimes people get that confused with taxes, and that revenues to us is revenues out of business generation. So we focused on revenues. The second thing was open for business. You heard Bob say that numerous times. You don't know how many times I walked into his office and asked him why this community center was closed. It made absolutely no sense. This community center was closed at night. People were picking up a key at the police office in order to come here and have meetings in the evenings. The weekends, not only do we have permanent residents, we have people driving over the bridge to come over here, and guess what's closed? Our community center. Made no sense at all. We have a covered pool. Boy, is there passion around that one. Guess what? It wasn't open. You want to use it, you work for a living, try to get in there and get to use it. The sense here, folks, was the directive that he got from a lot of people was, we've got these amenities, let's make sure they're open for our use. Just closing them down and closing them down and closing them down so that we don't have to have more revenue and more increases or anything, what you end up with is a community that isn't open. So we wanted to do that. We definitely said that We needed to jumpstart the yacht club. Got the crazy idea of a coffee house. But, what? Okay. There's some numbers that you haven't heard here today, folks. We authorized $80,000, 40 of which was in the budget for general maintenance, and 40 of it was in there to launch the Java Yacht Club, the coffee shop. They not only redid the work on the yacht club and opened the Java Bay Coffee House, they did it for 49 plus and change. They did it for $30,000 or $35,000 under budget on time. So this team that you've got working for you in Ocean Pines has proven they can take the money and spend it wisely and get things done on time and open the facilities for you and for us as members here. There's a lot of energy around one last comment having to do with, well, there's no plan. Where are they putting the money? Maybe the money will be misspent in the future. Well, first of all, there's nothing we can do about the money being misspent or spent correctly in the future. As a board of directors, I cannot encumber what they do. I can guarantee you from talking to all the board members, we will do everything legally possible to encumber that money, put it in reserves, make sure it's identified for what it's supposed to be spent for. But we don't have the right to encumber a board. Neither would I have wanted some of the previous boards around here to be encumbering us as to what we were allowed to do. So we're going to protect that money the best we can. If we don't know the order in which things are going to be bought or purchased or remain repaired from the 10-year task force, we don't know which thing is going to be in what order. But it kind of an analogy in some ways, it's kind of like when you first started out trying to save money to buy your first house. You didn't know where the house was going to be. You didn't know what kind of house it was going to, what it was going to be, how big, how small. You didn't know, but you still put the money aside. No, we may not know exactly what building is going to come before what building. But if you have been to our beach club, does anybody wonder we might not have to do something to that someday? Anybody wonder that? No. There's a whole list of things. The 10-year task force folks did a fabulous job in putting together what needs to be worked on. Our board that I sit on, one of 7 guys sitting around a table, by the way, I wish, let's get some voting here, get a woman on there, by the way, for next year. I want to see us get a report on that 10-year task force and a revised proposal of what that list ought to be, and let us codify that list and say, here's the list for now. Here's the plan for now. Is it going to change every year? Yes, probably. Things are going to come up. But I can assure you that this board that I sit on is going to protect those revenues and those reserves the best we can. We're going to work off of a 10-year task force. And when people say, well, you don't have a plan, it's not, you don't have a plan. We have not officially voted on the order in which the work will be done based on a plan. Now that is the thin slice of statement when they say we don't have a plan. I look at the 10-year task force, it's been presented in this room many times. That's the list. We need to vote on it and codify it, and our board knows that. So I wanted to share that with you, and I will turn this back over to Bob for questions. Bob, go here.
All right, folks. Any questions about the budget? And when you have them, would you please go to the mic so it can be recorded? Yes, ma'am. Nothing too tough, okay.
It's easy. Anywhere in those slides, I didn't see non-collectibles. How many people are in arrears with their HOA fees?
Good question.
But we have a list we're working. We don't have that with
Total dollars.
Art?
That's it.
Well, look. We're actually, we have a plan, just so you know, to address that. And it's like 3 phases with the process. And we're taking them in 10 infractions or 10 folks that are in arrears at once. And we're going through the legal process with those. So I can get you the number, though.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have that with me. I didn't think to bring it. Yeah, please. That was Kim.
You can talk real loud.
That's true, but I'm trying to make sure that they pick it up. Yes, sir.
Bob, a couple of comments, just, I was going to go over the good things and then the bad things if I could, if that's possible. I do have some specific questions. But one of the,
Yes, sir.
So when people come to the mic, can they put their name and their address so we know they're from the...
I'm sorry, Dick Neiman, 45 Wood Duck Drive. I must say that's the prettiest budget presentation I've ever seen, okay? And I appreciate that. Last year I commented on the fact that bless Pete's heart, that presentation is a real sleeper when we're talking about the current year budget. We're only talking about like $78 worth of the whole reserve. So I really wish we could save that part for a reserve discussion and a 10-year plan discussion and hit that briefly. I mean, I counted about $400 of our assessments going into reserves of some type, and we're talking about $78 for an hour. That's excessive. I made that comment last year. You weren't here. I hope that we take that to heart. I want to say you talked about focus on revenue generation versus cost cutting. Cost cutting is certain. Revenue generation is not. It does concern me that this budget, $800,000 increase, most of all in payroll.
Yes.
It is offset by wishing that we'd increase our revenues. Our track record has been, last year, $160,000 deficit. I don't know if we've included a 2011 deficit in our 2012 budget or not. But if we have that deficit of a couple $100,000 again, and the revenues materialize as they have in the past, so it's a show me type thing. I'm not from Missouri, but it does bother me that we're putting $800,000 worth of people on board that you would have to fire for a year, contingent on $800,000 worth of revenue. That does bother me because we have not been successful. I appreciate your enthusiasm. I hope like hell you can say next year, Dick, we got $1.6 million, you know,
right.
Each one to produce 2. That does bother me. I think it's good that you treat amenities as businesses. In the past, I defined amenity as any of our businesses that didn't make money. That became an amenity. I think your budget development is the best process. The guidance that you got was good this year. That's all an improvement over the years. This is one of the best processes, again, better than what I've even seen last year. I think your change in the yacht club was great. I do question a few things here. One is, I thought we had a recreation supervisor. Has that person left?
We currently have a recreation supervisor, correct.
So, and you want another one?
Correct.
So we're gonna have 2 recreation supervisors.
Correct.
Is that just to cover the additional time, or?
Not just time, planning, some additional programming. The rec supervisors, just so everybody understands, is a planning position. That's what they do, and I actually met with some folks outside of Ocean Pines Rec Department to understand
Okay, so
the position.
there's no duplication. I'm happy
No,
with
sir.
that.
No, sir.
You talked about a campus management over for Joe, basically.
Yes.
One of the things I hope you would consider is being at the yacht club. It seems to me there's this funny line of demarcation between there and the pool. So if people take food over to the pool and leave junk, well, the lifeguards aren't cleaning up that part. And so I'm saying we ought to maybe think about campus management with the pool and the yacht club, some way, shape, or form.
We will. Yeah.
One of the things on the fire department, that's bothered me because years ago we've been trying to tell those people, bill for your services, bill for your services. They finally have, and I want to make sure that somewhere we're getting full benefit of that. I would like to know how much of our assessment is still going to pay for the fire department as far as it used to be $15 for EMS services. Does that mean nothing this year, or?
Their total request is $427,000, down from $607,000 last year.
I don't know what they got in revenues as a result of.
Yeah, there was $334,000 in EMS.
Will the membership get any cut at this new agreement that we have with them as far as fairness and equity? I'm appreciative of the fact that we do get money from them now.
Right.
But when they can pay off an $800,000 mortgage real quick like that, buy additional lots in Ocean Pines, I question whether or not we're getting the full benefit as Ocean Pines Association.
Gotcha.
Okay?
May I inject one little comment?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, Dick mentioned that our funding for EMS was $1,550, right?
Yeah.
That's a common misconception in this community. That's a specific amount set aside for the total funding for EMS is hundreds of thousands of dollars, not the 1,550. And that's good, by the way. I mean,
No, 100,000 per person, per lot? I was talking 1,550 per lot.
No, per lot, it's much, per lot. The 1,550 is only a small piece of what the funding is.
Correct.
The total funding last year was,
Okay.
come down by, as he said,
I'm
$180,000.
hoping that we'll have that explained to us, the whole new agreement versus the old agreement.
Yes, absolutely.
Have we factored into the budget any potential for an internal revenue settlement, just in case? I mean, I hope like heck we prevail on that one, but I don't see that in the budget as even a whimsical thing, and maybe the lawsuit would take longer than 2012. And again, the loss for 2011, if we have one, I think we should have part of that in there.
I can answer that. We have a potential $1 million lawsuit, as everybody should know from the newspapers, from the IRS suit. In my cover page to the board with the budget was consideration of some of those funds that are, obviously the reserve accounts have some protection around them, but the funding strategy in this year's budget is for $3.4 million. I would assume that, and I don't have any major capital expenditures. So I'm kind of hedging my bet a little bit there. If we do fall into that type of situation, there may be some opportunity.
I don't think we're establishing a reserve for lawsuits, are we?
Well, I'm telling you, the funds are set aside. That's a board. I'm not going to ask you guys.
Okay, so we would have to take our capital reserves and use them for a lawsuit if we got stuck with that in 2012? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, it's a board decision. I'm funding reserves of $3.4 million.
Yeah, but I think those are all designated to specific spots to replace other capital assets, what Pete just showed us, okay? So if anything, we shouldn't be doing that. It's in my opinion, okay. I think, believe it or not, I appreciate this opportunity. Again, I don't want to sound all negative. I think you all have done a tremendous job of what you're doing. I just feel a little goosey this time of year in this environment, showing a 17-18% increase in payroll costs contingent on $800,000 worth of increase in revenues. I hope you can do it, but I wouldn't do it that way, being conservative. Thank you.
May I add one thing on the IRS, quickly? Dick?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned maybe we could settle with the IRS. Not possible. It's now been, the tax court has rendered an opinion. The dollar amount at issue now is now being appealed to the court below the Supreme Court of the United States. There will be no settlements. It's either $1 million or it's nothing. Okay, the settlement discussions are all taking place. The IRS has acknowledged that some of their positions they backed off of. It was all reaffirmed by the tax court decision. There's no more play in that at all. And it is substantially less than the original assessment, by the way. Substantially less than the original IRS examination and proposed efficiency. In fact, for the first 2 years they examined, and the only 2 years they've examined, we projected that $1 million for every year since to cover a whole 9-year period. They examined 2 years. But if we lose on that issue for those 2 years, then the same issue applies to 16 and 7. The original amount of $200,000+ came in at $80,000 once the concessions were made. So I don't want anybody to think that we can split the difference with the IRS. It's either $0 or $1 million. It's at the federal circuit court level for the 6th Circuit and next court. I doubt we're going to appeal to the United States Supreme Court if we lose.
Well, I think, personally, I think we will prevail. I think we will prevail. That's my personal opinion. But if not, we're going to have a special assessment.
We're not putting monies aside for what Bob's saying. We're being a little conservative in expenditures just in case.
I just hope we're not here next year having a special assessment to pay off that $1 million so we don't run out of reserves.
Any board will have to address that.
Have 500, just to answer your question, ma'am, $548,000 is with the current overdue assessment. Sorry, that's 350 people, or 350.
Dollar amount again, please?
548,000.
Delinquent dues?
Yes. And that is as of 12/31. Thank you, Arnie.
Yeah, we want the questions over at the mic so that we can record for the broadcast of this, which is another. Oh yes.
Yes, sir.
Things are changing.
Staff, 29 Woodduck Drive. I'm also a member of the Budget and Finance Advisory Committee, but my remarks are going to be personal. They do not pertain to budget and finance. First of all, with regard to the question that this lady posed and the level of defaults, if you look at the $540,000 that is currently in default, compare that to the 2 or 3 year period of time over which those defaults have occurred and the total revenues that we have assessed our membership, it's less than 3%. So I just want to go on record as saying we have an excellent collection rate here in the Pines from our membership.
You betcha.
I also want to commend Bob on the presentation and the budget preparation. I came here today prepared to lambaste, and I'm backing away from that only because of the presentation that has been made and the very cogent, forceful presentation in terms of where we stand with regard to our reserves. And I think the reserves, to a large extent, drive the increase that we have in our assessment right now. If you look at it, it's $45 in total, but 30 of that, or 2/3, is going to reserves. And I think Pete made a very cogent, very forceful presentation in terms of what we have to do if we as a community are going to survive. That being said, I also feel that we have to take into consideration what the current economy looks like and what a lot of us in this community are having to get by on. I'm on Social Security. I have a pension. My pension does not have COLA benefits to it. Social Security has been frozen for 3 years now. And in fact, for anybody who's Medicare age, the actual net that you receive from Social Security has gone down because Medicare has gone up. The other point I'd like to make is that over the last 5 years, our assessments have gone up by 48%. Same time, property taxes have gone up less than 9%, and our property values have gone down by probably 30% or better. So my question to you, Bob, is how much of this quality of life and retaining our value are you going to bring back to us this coming year?
Great question. If I ran the total economy, I could give you that answer. Loaded question. I can't answer that. Hey, Carol.
Hello, how are you?
Well,
Yeah, I was going to say, aren't we supposed to come up here? Yeah, I'm not ignoring you. Carol Ludwig, 5 Sandpiper Lane. I just want to congratulate you also on that and bring up one point, and it was touched on earlier, as far as the human resources part. The investment that we make in a human resources type atmosphere, and all of you who have worked anywhere know that that is offset by your expectations of the employees. Right now, we don't have that, and I'm sure everyone in this room has taken a shot at our employees. You know, there's how many public works people does it take to fill a pothole, all of that kind of stuff. Public Works has been doing wonderful. The Java Bay Cafe people are doing wonderful. I think that we have to make an investment in those employees because they work for us, and they're going to hopefully generate that revenue. They're doing it now. So I think that's something we have to look at. I don't think we increase our liability anymore by opening more hours, or that's wonderful sounds coming in there.
Yes.
And I would like to ask in the budget, possibly, could there be a nice doorway here so that, you know, the more formal things that take place
we
here.
have a second set of doors to match the ones that you look through and see there that open up that match exactly.
Excellent. So that'll be covered up. But anyway, that was I think the investment that we make, and also the $800,000 should be looked at a little bit as part of the thing that we say every year, that we go over budget. I mean, we have been over budget with a deficit for a few years in a row. That should count. By planning a budget, no? What?
We had a profit of $160,000 last year.
Right, but we had a profit, but how did we do with the budget? That was,
We
that
budgeted
was...
to zero. We budgeted to a zero. So
Right.
Carol, it was $160,000 profit.
Cool.
And it was $160,000 better than budget. In fact, the precise number might have been 158.
Mm-hmm. All right,
Yeah.
but we spent over budget.
Before.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Years
we still have to
before.
say that you spent
Yeah,
over budget.
years.
Yes.
Yeah.
When we make investments in things that aren't in the budget, which Bob is trying to get us to do, it's in the budget. It doesn't mean you're going to spend $800,000. You are not asking us for $800,000. You are asking us to set up a budget that includes all of the above and hopefully pay back for it. Correct. Wonderful job.
Thank you.
Norm Katz, 10 Holly Court. Great presentation.
Thank you, sir.
And, seeing that the board is focusing on revenue, it's a perfect segue on what I really had to say. This is an area that I thought the board had a shortcoming in that you were not aggressive enough, and you're not farsighted enough in looking at revenues. And it's an area that I've always been concerned about. I just have a couple of ideas that I'd just like to float out there to get some additional revenue, just for food for thought. And these are ideas, by the way, that require no additional manpower or anything like that. They're just areas. Okay. Our annual budget hearing, in fact, every time I see this, it just gets me to think how lucky we are with all of the things that we have here in the Pines, with the activities and the amenities. And came to realize that we're not the only ones that are lucky. Actually, the entire county is very lucky because we share all of that with them. And our parks, our concerts, walking and biking trails, so on and so on. I'm really going to shorten this. I was going to really, enumerate them all, because when you enumerate them all, you can see how great it really is. But it's all made possible with a huge parks and recreation budget that's primarily funded with our assessments, and it's subsidized with our assessments. So with all of that considered, I believe that there's very good justification to request a recreation grant from the county. All of the aforementioned benefits can be quantified, okay, in dollars and cents, okay, and certainly the well-being and goodwill can be demonstrated to the county as well. We have a high school swim team that we didn't have before, and so on and so forth. So I'm just making a suggestion that we present this to the county. They may be strapped for cash at this time, but we should be making that case now. So when the county can't afford it, maybe they can even afford it now. But we should be making that case now to get a recreation grant from the county. Another area that I think maybe we've been a little bit short-sighted in is you all know that Mr. Rickman, who owns Ocean Downs, is a very successful businessman. He also owns Delaware Park. If you look into Delaware Park, what he does there, he has a golf club as well, he has some restaurants, and he has partnered with some of the local facilities, and he has standalone and combination packages that he sells. Well, Mr. Rickman doesn't have all of those facilities here, but his good neighbor, Ocean Pines, does. Okay, so I think our could be a good neighbor. Okay, you have swims. Okay, sorry, I should be reading this. So I think we should be talking to Mr. Rickman and jointly promoting and marketing our facilities. And I have to tell you that while I'm talking about this, okay, Mr. Rickman has already taken the bull by the horns along with Ocean City, and they're already talking about doing just that.
That's correct.
Partnering, and we should be doing the same thing. One last thing that actually while I was doing the presentation, I didn't have in my notes. another area that just reminded me of. We should also be looking at the liquor license that we have at the beach club. And we should be changing that. I know there's some political things involved in that. But we should be changing that liquor license so we can sell liquor to everybody and promote that. That's it, food for thought.
That's excellent, thank you. Todd, you gonna stand on that side of the road, sir?
Don't get. I'm Paul Stream, 12 o'clock guy. First of all, like Mr. Scott say, you made a nice presentation and everything. I got two things. I'm a little bit upset, you know. The first thing is about the swimming pool. And like the gentleman said there, that time was not budgeted. But there was a little bit of squawk in the board. See, I got a lot of information that, you know, I talked to people. They were said if you don't vote for the swimming pool, they wouldn't vote for the new community hall. And the man who did all the talking and that, he moved out the time, so we sit with $1 million. Right? Yeah, well, it's true. Yeah. Then we had our general manager, you know, it was not working. We was losing money. But I wanted to say, see, when I moved in here, it was told me this was a private community. Everything in the community was for the people of the community. I didn't know if that's right. So then he set signs up. Come and swim. This is one of the problems I got. I don't care that the kids from the school come and use the swimming pool. That's not my opinion, or that they pay more than us, but I always got the feeling this is a private community. I didn't know if I'm right. Yeah, okay. I'll give you one shot. The second, I wanted to ask you, when they was trying to build that $6 million community hall, I think we got 19 lots over here, right? What Ocean Pine got, 12 or 19?
Yes, sir.
Did we pay taxes on them lots?
Yes.
Why? And we got that in the front of the post office. Why is not made a way to get that off our back when it sits empty? We pay taxes, sell it for a reasonable price, or ask the people who live next door to it if they want to buy it and make a garden out of it. See, we're talking about money, we're talking about deflation, but here we got money sitting, we can sell. We're not going to, you know, they bought that 20 acres for $1 million. We're not going to get $3 million for that. That's my opinion. But I like to see that you people get that off our back. You know, that is money. We live in today. We cannot say, well, 10 years from today, there's $6 million worth. I'm probably dead. Let us use the money today. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Good point. We do have lots, and that's just so you know. Interestingly enough, I had a call this week about one of the 19 lots, the residential lots. Someone who lives next to one of them is interested in purchasing one. So they are available. Please, if anybody knows anybody wants to buy a lot, send them my way. Happy to sell. Now, the commercial property is a little different. Yes, sir.
Go. Poor guy's been raising his head for...
I got a deal for you.
I got a deal for you or what?
Good afternoon, Ocean Pines. My name is Gene Ringsdorf, and when I left this morning, I was living at 2 Carriage Lane. I don't know if my wife sold the house. We're not trying to sell it, but, you know, I never know. Anyway, Bob, great presentation. A lot of enthusiasm, great explanation, and kudos to you and the team that put it together. Pete, kudos to you too, because everybody should realize that prior to us planning and managing the reserves the way they should be managed, and Mr. Staus used to call me the priest of depreciation because they used to complain about our way we managed our reserves and depreciation in the past. But prior to that, all the herky-jerky assessment increases were primarily being caused due to the lack of planning, due to the lack of proper management of our reserves. So the fact that Pete and the board and the general manager are trying to plan better and manage the reserve better, the net result of that is predictable increases, not these herky-jerky increases where you get $75 one year, $150 the next year. He's trying to smooth it out. So kudos to you for that too. I do have I sent an email to all the board, two emails, but I think because with Phyllis being off for a death in the family, it didn't get to you in time.
I haven't seen them, so.
Right.
I haven't gotten them yet.
Right, so I recognize that.
Okay.
I had, I'll make a comment because you're interested in revenue generation. In my opinion, we have one special use, adult, primarily used by adult, amenity that is totally unmonitored, and yet it could provide a revenue stream. And that is the White Horse Park boat ramp lot. Somebody knew I would bring it up. But this is my 7th year in a row that I'm bringing this up. I think that we should charge, because I know I live directly across the ramp, and people can tell me everything they want about what they do. I see what's going on. We have marine service vendors that use that. Those people don't pay $1 to the capital cost or the maintenance cost, but they're making a profit off of it. Because these marine service vendors, you got outsiders. People say, no, how do you know they're outsiders? We know. We know which ones are not renters, are not property owners. They're just using it. So I think we ought to start something like a sticker, a pass, that be affixed to the boat trailer or the car, primarily the boat trailer, because then it could be monitored. Every once in a while, our police department could go through to see if there's a proper sticker affixed to the trailer. The sticker could go for any amount of money, I don't care. But if you figure there's about 1,000 users in the summer, if you charge $10, there's 10,000. If you charge $1,000, there goes our deficit. So I'm formally making for an umpteenth time, consider a boat ramp pass, because it's no different than what you're doing at the beach club parking. It gets a high use during the summer and no use during the rest of the year, or very little, except marine service vendor and duck hunters. Is there anything in the budget that considers possible casino revenues?
No, and that's by design.
Okay.
Because I have no history to we looked at Perryville and what they receive over there, but truth of the matter is I'd be budgeting on the target, couldn't tell you what it is, so I'd rather not have it. If it comes in, that's positive. We expect it to start coming in next month, by the way.
All right, cool, that's great. If everybody goes down there and gambles a lot, maybe we don't have to pay any assessments. So we save money. The other item that I wanted to ask you about is just I'm not quite, my reaction to your statements about you have a couple of things in the budget, but you're not sure you're actually going to do them, like hiring the chef, and that was one other item I thought you said. I just want, in my mind, that my reaction was, well, you put those costs in the budget, that's assessment dollars we get charged. Because the assessments aren't built on actual cost, the assessments are built on what's in the budget.
Yes.
So I guess I'm a little wondering why you would make the comment that I'm putting it in the budget, and I'm not sure I'm going to do it, but that's going to translate into dollars of assessments.
Yeah, no, great question. The chef was one that's come up several times. And the primary reason why we don't have the design of what the product mix is going to be, specifically on the second floor of the yacht club for the summer. So to say I'm going to hire a chef at X amount, I will have to plus staffing up there. Okay, I'm assuming I'll either need a cook or a chef to serve those needs. So I budgeted for it. Don't know, I don't want to say definitely it's this yet, because it'd be disingenuous. I have budgeted for it for a purpose.
I recognize that you budget for it, and I recognize you're not sure, but my problem is that still translates to assessment dollars.
What hasn't changed is the budget, just so everybody knows, your assessment is spot on plan with the 5-year planning process. So I was very careful not to.
Okay. The last item, it was prompted by Pete's discussion about the Ford whatever they are, and our transportation fleet. And I know I asked this when I was on the Budget and Finance Committee years ago, but I might bring it up again because I think it would levelize expenditures for our fleet, is to consider again leasing our entire fleet, and I'll call grounds care fleet, our vehicle fleet and grounds care fleet, leasing it, because major corporations do that to level out their expenditures, and we don't take the risk of ownership, and we don't have these herky-jerky capital costs to incur. We would have more levelized maintenance or operating costs, rental costs every year. And I know, Art, you looked at that in the past. I don't know what the results were, but...
we can look at it.
I'm sorry?
I said we can look at it.
No, I mean, I think Art did it one time, didn't you?
We've done it several times.
And the results are?
Well, the interest rate differential really is generally what, instead of buying it, you're leasing it, and it's usually 2 or 3 more percent over what you earn on it.
But you're not taking the risk of ownership, and you have levelized expenditures. It comes out of the capital requirement.
I do have a question about that.
Out of reserve fund, Gene, you know that, right?
The purchases now are out of reserve
Right,
fund.
right.
Right, I know that.
I think what Art's saying is that we're getting about 1% of our reserve funds now, and we've looked into leasing from time to time. Leasing has a built-in interest factor of about 5 to 6.
I understand.
Okay? So for the community and the members, it's better to use our funds that were put aside for the 1%, to give up 1% of earnings on those, to avoid paying 6% earnings on the lease, and the profit to the company that's leasing them to us. So we can look at it,
Okay, I just, I could argue that you're like...
we can look at it.
Okay, thank you. Again, great job. Just don't forget my boat ramp proposal.
Got it down, buddy.
Gene, remember the part 2 about, I'm tagging on to Gene, in talking to police or law enforcement and our neighborhood watch, placards like that would be helpful when there is an incident, which there are at that boat ramp over there. People are there that shouldn't be there, and there is no way for our police to approach them other than to ask for the driver's license and prove their residency. And that's a tough situation. A placard would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Anything.
Give me a bazooka, I'll take it.
Tom Bickerstaff again.
You were up once, right?
Yeah, this time I'm putting my BFAC hat on. I have a quick question for Pete, I think. The Golf Drainage Reserve faced a shortfall of about $213,800. Is that being recovered this year, or what's happening to that?
The answer is no. That project, I think, there's a 1-year suspension of the activity and also putting assessment dollars into that. So it's remaining as is, and no activity is in the budget right now either way.
So that's still a shortfall of $214,000 roughly. Okay. Because I had built my calculations around replenishing that.
Are you proposing the assessment to do that?
No. What I was going to propose is a $17.31 per capita reduction. That basically being the $176,000 that we're saving on the fire ambulance, $184,000 that we're saving, or it's not the savings, or maybe it is, but the $184,000 reduction in golf losses. If you combine those two, that's $360,000. That's a $42.64 increment per household. Offsetting that is the $213,800 deficit in the Golf Drainage Reserve, because we should have considerably more money in that drainage reserve right now than we have. And that's basically because this past year we spent more in golf drainage than what was there. So the net of those, if you were to replenish that golf drainage reserve, would be $146,200 for those 3 items. So in effect, are we not increasing our assessment by $62.31 per household if you take those three items into consideration?
Very good.
Answer's no.
He addressed it to you. You want to swing at it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and we need to talk, the budget just happened to approve by the board, you know that. And that's one of the issues on the list to talk about. Right now, the budget, and you saw from my opening slide, and Bob's opening slide, one of his opening slides too, the operations and the amenities this year in the budget takes no additional assessment dollars. There are pluses and minuses. Golf is a plus. The fire, by virtue of reduction of what we're funding there, is a plus, right?
Yes.
We have some offsetting negatives. Aquatics is a plus. Hiring a personnel director is a minus, if you will. Hiring, so there's a bunch of pluses and minuses, Tom, in the operating budget and in the amenity budget. And you properly point out, in golf, we're reducing the loss rather significantly because of Casper's having been retained to do that in the budget that they have. And of course, Casper has not only golf, but also Turn Grill and Picture. So all of those things are offsetting. So there are improvements in certain operations, in certain departments. There are additional human capital needs that are being fulfilled in Bob's budget. And he's done all of that without taking any of the increase of $45. You properly mentioned the $30 in the increase, and I covered it, I hope, sufficiently. That's set aside, being managed, blah, blah, blah. But what I didn't mention, I failed to, is $12, $15. The other $15 this year is going for new capital. And as you know, by being a member of the Budget and Finance Committee, Tom, the reserve account funds all replacement assets. But if we decide on a new investment in something that we hadn't done before, right over here, the skate park being an example, right? Or a vehicle that we have to have a replacement vehicle. Hey, let's do something new. That has to come out of the operating budget down. And you know that, right? That's called new capital. And basically, the $30 dedicated, and then on top of that, you add the $15 for new capital, there's your $45. Now, you can take a look at all Bob's departments and all the amenities and say, you know, this one here, I think we ought to do something with, and that one there, we ought to do something with. But at the end of the day, it's all break even. It's all from the opening slide. So, yeah, I mean, you could take, it's like some people say, oh, I don't play golf or tennis, so I don't want to pay that part of the assessment that goes to fund that. I want to keep all the rest. And by the way, Bob's budget shows a net plus from all the amenities. I don't know whether you called attention to that. I don't think you did. But there's a profit inherent, and Bob and I kidded last night, because in the budget itself, as well as this year actually, some amenities make money and some lose. I mean, we're working on a loss, you know that. But net, there's a profit. So if we eliminate all the amenities, we'd have to increase the assessment. Because on a net basis, that includes marina, you know, which is profitable, right? Parking, beach club parking, that's profitable. Golf loses. So, you know, but all in, a $45 increase this year is going to two things. Number one, the $30, and on top of that, 12 of the 15, 13 of the 15, almost all of it is new capital, and a $1 increase in debt service on the famous, infamous pool car.
Good morning. Joe Reynolds, 84 Watertown Road. Bob, and I've said this in the past, and I mean it sincerely, you're a breath of fresh air in this community. Your enthusiasm is contagious.
Thank you.
And I'm totally supportive of your view of looking to increase usage, increase income, increase the quality of our services. No question about it. It's the right tack. We've been away from that for far too long, probably for 15 years. And it's going to take a while to sink in. This community has been sort of in a doldrum, you might say. You're waking it up to the possibilities. And that's what we have to realize is the possibilities. A couple of issues. You did mention something in the budget. This goes along with something that Gene said about you having the budget, your initiative for the outside pool services. And if you mentioned specifically that if we didn't do it, then we wouldn't spend the $56,000. What you left unsaid, though, it has a far greater impact than that. We may not spend the 56, but the budget includes a $200,000 projected budget profit, which if it is not carried forward, you'll not make that. And you can debate whether you can make the $200,000 or not. That's a debatable item.
Sure.
But if you don't do it, that's $200,000 is right off the top on the budget. So that's an important issue. Tom mentioned the idea that people are saying we don't have a plan, talking about our future spending on reserves and so on. And I've been one who has written about that and talked about that at the various meetings over the last couple of weeks with Budget, Finance, and the Board of Directors. And what I have said is that we have a very precise plan for collecting money from our association members. What is not very precise is what we're going to spend it on, how much each item we're going to spend it on will cost, and when it will be done. I think there are three critical issues. Tom used the analogy if you're going to put away money for a house. The analogy breaks down, however, if you are a person making $100,000 a year and you have a family, and you know for the next 5 years or more, you're going to be making 100 to 150, you don't start putting money away for a $10 million house. You put money away for something that you reasonably expect that you'll be able to purchase. I don't think we're collecting too much money at this point. I really don't. From a personal standpoint, I can't speak for everybody in the community. We have a very diverse community here, from people who are very low incomes to people on extremely high incomes. It's one of the things that makes this community good, is our diversity. But from a personal standpoint, like the yacht club, if it's $1 million, $2.5 million, my personal standpoint, I wouldn't care if you spent $5 million over there in that yacht club, as long as when it was done, it was something that was really nice and would attract people. That's my personal standpoint. I'm not concerned about the $46. It doesn't impact me personally that much from a financial standpoint. But the fact of the matter is, the people in this community, as much as we say that past boards have spent reserve monies to fund operations, which is true, the people in this community have been very supportive. I look around this room and I can see faces of people who were in this exact same physical location with chairs facing that way, watching a screen as Tom Olson stood about here and explained to all of us why we needed a $150 assessment increase about 3 years ago, okay? And he very carefully detailed that only $47 of that was due to increased operational expenses, and $103, give or take, whatever it was for future major constructions to rebuild our major facilities, okay? Most of the people here today were not on the board then. But those of you who are here may recall that. Now that $103 and the $150 is still being paid. It's still in the assessment. The $103 was to go into reserves for our future capital projects, our major capital projects. That's still being collected. So how generous the people in this community are, Mr. Gonsack has outlined that at some point at the end of this current plan that the board has in place, $8 to $9 million will have been collected for that reserve. I would submit at the end of that period, it's not $8 million or $9 million that's collected, but $19 or $20 million, because that number doesn't include the $103, which will have been collected from 8,400 lot owners for perhaps 12 to 13 years. So it's not as though the people in this community are not generous, and it's not as though if we use the money properly that we won't have collected $19 million, and I'm not so sure we've identified $19 million worth of projects. But those are the issues of my plan. Primarily that we need to get a little more specific. For example, the yacht club. I asked one board member, I said, how much are we going to spend? He said, $1 to $3 million. Number in that chart is 2.5. Again, if we spend $5 million, it's fine with me if we rebuild it and do it right. But if The general manager's initiative to turn that yacht club around and start making money proves to be successful, and he's telling us all it will be. I think any board would be hard pressed if he turns out, let's say he turns around and he's making $200,000 a year profit in the yacht club. Is the board of directors then going to say, oh, we're going to tear that place down and start over again, close it for a year? That wouldn't make any sense from a business standpoint. I think at that point they might remodel. They might do $1 million. We could do a lot of work over there for $1 million. Wouldn't get you a brand new building. But there are a lot of ifs. That's my only point about the plan. And I know you can't answer them all, but I do believe that we're taking enough money for reserves from association members at this point to fund pretty much whatever we want to do. And Bob, please keep up thinking out of the box. Whether all your initiatives are accepted by the board or not, don't stop doing what you're doing. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, if you don't care how much it costs, would you adopt me? If you don't care how much you think it costs, would you adopt me?
Bill Wentworth. I live at 7 Trinity Place here in Ocean Pines. First of all, along with Bob's expectations and his presentation, in the business world, we hear all the time, you have to take risk, high reward. And I think that's where we're headed, and that's where we need to go. We have to get our arms around, our hands around the fact that we are no longer a mom and pop operation. We are a big business operation, and in business you have to look for revenue streams. I'll bet that there are very few people in here. First of all, just a real quick show of hands. How many people in here spend $75 or more a month on your cable bill? Your monthly cable bill. Every one of you people are paying money, more money on your cable a year than you are for our assessment.
A month.
A month. A year. Everyone in here is paying. Those of you who raise your hand, you're paying more for your cable service a year than you are for your assessment. And I will think too many people would argue with me. The quality of service that we get for our assessment is a hell of a lot better than the quality of service we get from the
I don't plot that one.
Anyway, a question. A little while ago, you spoke about the money that slots revenue that we are going to eventually receive. And of course, we don't see it here because we don't know. We don't know if it's going to be $100 a month, $10,000 a month. We don't know that. But my question is, has there been any thought as when we start receiving that revenue, where that money is going to go?
Let me answer that.
Thank you.
The casino money has come up a couple times now, and just so people know that Dave Stevens is on the board with us, and Pete Gomzak and I have already started discussions with our representative on the Gaming Commission to try to really nail down exactly what the formulas are, what the impact may be, so that we are aware of the situation. We're beginning to get our hands around it. As Bob mentioned earlier, there are some estimates of the performance of one of the other casinos, but that other casino is twice as large as ours, in the middle of a community of millions of people instead of ours. So we're being very conservative in our approach here, but you can feel comfortable that there are at least 3 of our board members already actively involved in trying to make sure that we get what we deserve and what we're supposed to get, and we have a good handle on what that's going to be. And obviously, we're going to start getting some money out of that at some point soon. We don't know because we don't know exactly how their business is going over there. I don't know if you've been there or not, but it's fairly full. It's going pretty well. But we are on top of it, but there are no numbers that I can share at this point right now because we really don't know what it will be. But we do know we have the issue of addressing what are we going to do with that money. Where is it going to be applied? And as a board, we're going to be addressing that going forward. And Dave and Pete and I will continue that effort to try to get our arms around what's going on with the casino. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
When you get $250 less, I want $250.
Yeah, we're ready to wrap this up. Mandate to go to infrastructure.
Kathy Geary, 2 Workler Court. I just have one comment to make, and I was really thrilled to hear about the on time, which I knew, but about the under budget of the job of A.
Yeah.
And I would love to make that somehow known to the media, known to the community. It's one of the
They're right
wonderful
there.
things I've heard about.
Yeah.
And I have been there, and it's great, and I echo the other comments. I think the presentation was great. But I just was so happy to hear that.
All right.
You.
Thank you.
I was more thrilled. May I ask? Yes, sir.
Bruce McIntyre, Section 4168. Again, kudos for good presentation. Unfortunately, I don't attend a lot of the board meetings like I used to years ago. Did the idea of a bus system over to the beach club get discarded, or is that still to be debated?
That's still to be debated.
I didn't see any provision for it in your budget.
Yeah, I didn't cover every line item in the budget, but yeah, there is,
Okay.
that is still in there.
Okay. I don't want to put cold water on what has been a good situation here. It's been a little difficult with the noise. The kids are very exuberant. I think you have a upcoming infrastructure problem with your water supply to the north end of Ocean Pines. You have a situation at this time, right now, where the water lines have deteriorated to the houses. I'm going to say in Section 4, I know that real well.
Right.
They've been to my house 3 times to deal with a broken water line. And in the process, I don't know who's responsible for what, but I was under the impression that the water supply is now a county problem, correct?
Yes, sir.
But when they come and they don't do the job properly, and you fellows come along to do your surface drainage ditch digging operation, how shall I say it? They have them in Florida where the road disappears and you have the sinkhole. Yes, well, I have had a permanent sinkhole now for some 3 or 5 years, and they did determine that the water meter cylinder and the plastic pipe that goes down for its electric easily read meter reading device, it's an absolute mess. And at this point, the surface water from the road is now draining into your newly dug up ditch, but supposedly, in other words, you have conflicting responsibilities that are not harmonizing. I guess that's the easiest way to put it.
Okay.
And the last item I'd like to comment or ask about is anything in the nature like we have at the state level. Do we, with our employees for this community, have any unfunded liabilities that we should be looking at? And I'll let it go at that.
That's a good question. I don't know that we do. Okay, I don't know either.
That's my answer.
Hopefully the new HR person they approved can help me with that.
Bob, thank you very much for a great presentation today. Just so everybody knows where we are in the process, this was the next step, which was a presentation to the community and input from the community. The budget has not been approved yet. The board will begin on Tuesday for a working session. We will not vote on the budget at that point. We are in the process now of taking the input from the Budget and Finance Committee, which is a very fine written report, very challenging report. They did their job. We have a lot of questions in front of us. We have a lot of issues as a board that we have to wrestle with at this point. Revenue, costs, what the payback is. I simply want to let you know that I appreciate you coming out today, the input, the questions. Again, the Budget and Finance Committee has helped us assess. They spent 5 days, folks. And some of those folks on that committee, by the way, are not retired. They make money every day doing what they do, and some of them are on commission, and they gave up 5 days of their life doing that work. So I want to thank them publicly for that effort that they did. It was a tough effort, a lot of work, tough challenges. As Bob said earlier, it was a gauntlet, but it was a good gauntlet to go through.
You didn't go through it, I did.
I know you did. I'm about to. We've been through this process. This is where we are. We've not done yet. There's still questions out there. One of them was the bus that was raised. That's in the budget. We've got to talk through that. But again, thank you all for coming out today. Good, solid questions. Pete, good presentation as well. And thank you all.